minutes, just give you an update on what's going on with Nino. Nino, I guess, is leaving the hospital, and he's going to be doing a show with Juan later. Just just a little blip for Nino. We'll see. He's might have to have a procedure done. That's what he said on his. He let something out, I guess, and said it might be doing something. So you never know. He could be good. He could be doing something, and who knows? We're all here for a short period of time, and try to do the best we can. So send him lots of love, and we'll see what happens. Now, as far as he's one of those guys that was almost gone. His accident, and his spirit left, and he got visited and went to the light, and they're like, you need to go back and do some more work. God said he'd take care of him and give him lots of information. So that's where he's at right now. Set him in his footsteps into preparation for the time to come. He was told to study the Bible, the Quran, history, archaeology, astronomy, metaphysics, earth science, climatology, political science, military strategy, and psychology. And during his near-death experience, he was told he would change jobs frequently, and each job would be ordained to teach him a valuable lesson. And that's what obviously happened for him. Now, that we're going to talk about Iran, and he's going to share how political realignment that will change the world. And so I've looked at his slides, pretty interesting. I'm looking forward to him coming on and about that. So slide, I'll go share that. Right, so I can go in here, figure out how to get it. Iran and the geopolitical realignment that will change the world. Western hegemony is dead, and a new era of peace and prosperity is possible. So we're going to talk about what you need to know. Now, as you guys can see, this goes back quite a long time. Holy Roman Empire and so forth, fractured Europe with feet of iron and clay. We know that Europe is really compromised right now, and they're completely not dependable. And I think we're going to see the fracturing of Europe ways. That Starmer is supposedly going to resign on Monday, so we'll see how that's going to affect Europe and so forth. So very, very interesting time that we're basically in right now.
You're here, but you can't be heard or seen. So where are you?
Yeah, we have him. Have you up, Larry?
Okay.
Tracy Joseph.
Can you hear me?
Talking.
You have no sound.
I have no sound. That's interesting. Let me see. I don't see a mute button. Shit.
Medicine, I'm gonna just call it.
Let me try to work with you.
My microphone says it's good.
Glitchy, yeah. So hopefully we got it fixed. All right. So Larry's trying to figure it out on his end. Of course, he's got the book "Restoring the Republic." That's out right now. I've got that book. Really good insights in it. He'll be talking about that book. And
Calling Tracy
also
Joe
have
Jocko.
fires that are going on in California. So a couple fires happened. Very suspect to me, where we have rooftop type fires, which Okay, so you got a roof duct fire, but it's like the water sprinkler systems in both of these huge warehouses somehow were non-operational, and we're kind of wondering what is going on here. I've talked about how scam they basically set it up, and something is being set up for California. So we have a fire that's going on right now, another warehouse. Now this warehouse, the first one burned completely to the ground. The fire department could not put it out for several days, so it burned completely through the ground. It had medical equipment, medical supplies in it. So what are they used for? And this one has emergency meat, massive warehouse, emergency medical meats that were, and other stuff that was there in this huge warehouse that is still burning as we're speaking, and has been for 4 days. So really crazy time. I'm gonna talk about this in another show. Looks like we got Larry here. Larry, how are you doing? So don't have any sound from you.
Can you hear me now?
How about now? Nope.
According to my end of it,
Still muted.
can you hear me now?
Nope. All right. Try and go out, Larry, and come back in again. All right. So let me pull up this warehouse that's burning right now. It's pretty crazy. So this is live news of this warehouse that is burning. So I'm gonna share the screen so you guys can see it. Pretty crazy. So another rooftop fire. I guess the story is and this one doesn't have the sprinkler system's not working on this one either. All right. So as you see, the roof is burning. The roof is on fire. So it's off to the side. They have these water. They set up automatic water. I guess the firefighters can't get up there and do it, so they place these hoses that are constantly running. So as you see, the smoke is like crazy. It's all over half of LA, and has been. I don't know if this is the 4th or 5th day. So we have there's a state of emergency declared. Oh yeah, state of emergency declared. So that's from the mayor and the governor. But the fire department can't put out a building fire. This is very suspect. So I guess this one's going to burn to the ground completely. The meat that's in it, they had to shut down the freezers and everything. So it's done. So it's spoiled. So you see these helicopters come in. So I don't know. It looks like the helicopters are in on it too. So they're like dumping water on the roof, and it's not hitting the roof right. Let's see if this is they get it right this time. So I'll watch this one. Lining up. So they're lining up in the smoke. Why not come from the other end, guys? So you can get down low. So they're looking, trying to get a good view, and they're going to release some water. There goes the water, and no, they hit the edge of the roof and don't really do much to the fire. Looks like they tore off the side of the building. So yeah, they're it's a mess. It's a complete mess over there, and we'll try and see if we can get Larry on here one more time. How about now, Larry?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Nope. Not hearing you.
Let me just.
All right, so let's go back to the other information. So let me pull up this one thing about both of those buildings that are burning. Now this is on my X. This gentleman went to Grok and asked about some context. So it talks about the government-related activity, primarily through limited federal contacts and ties. They got a little bit going on there. It says documented contact with the U.S. Department of the Interior. They got Fish and Wildlife Service, DoD Veterans Programs, emergency disaster context. So it's a cold storage facility during the COVID timeframe. Right. Lineage has mobilized for crises, for wildfires and storms, by securing food supplies, donating and coordinating aid with partners like the American Red Cross, strong and formalized ties through their own Lineage Foundation, partnerships with Feeding America, Global Food Banking Network. Initiatives include donating surplus food, share a meal. So that's some of the stuff that they're into. And then this was for the Medline Industries, the other warehouse that burned completely down to the ground for over 4 days. The fire department also could not put that out. It started, like I said, on the roof as well. Sounds like direct to injury weapon activity to me. But anyway, from the Root Wellness products, or get it however you get it, right? Natural ingredients seem to do really good, and across everything. So don't wait to get sick to start doing this stuff. Start doing it now, so it can make a difference. All right, here we go, Larry.
Can you hear me?
No, brother. Still no sound. All right. So there is a special also in LifeWave that we have going on. You can go to my websites to see that special. If you are not a LifeWave member, you can still purchase it. And here's lifewave.com. All right. You can also go to LifeWave Michael Jaco right there, and it'll bring up it again as well, so you can shop. If you're not signed up, then you go to the bottom of the page. There is a form that you can fill out, and I have a team. Join my team. It says our info. You go to the bottom and hit info at michaeljaco.com. Send it and say you want to sign up, and one of my team will help you walk you through the process. So very, very exciting times, right? So we have the deep state, playing games as usual. So Cali, going back to Cali, going back to Cali. I don't think so. So I'm not going back to Cali. Unfortunately, they have LifeWave shows there, so I have to go there to LifeWave shows. I hope they start doing them some other place, because I don't want to give California any more of my money than I have to. Right? They're just going to use it to create mayhem in their state. So I feel for you guys in Cali. It is a real shit show going on there right now, and it seems like you guys don't have any say whatsoever over there. They're stealing your votes. They're canceling your votes. So that's frustrating, and it'll continue to be frustrating, I think, for quite some time. So Newsom he called a state of emergency, like I said, and this is what he's saying. Here it is. Firefighters face renewed challenges Saturday. Of course, it's still going on today. So Governor Newsom, useless Newsom, and useless Bass declared a local emergency to support response efforts. Really? So you guys let buildings burn for 4 to 5 days. It's pretty much what's going on there. So it seems like the fire department is corrupt to me. I fought fires. I fought fires in the military. And they were very you go in and you can fight a fire, but they're not going in and fighting these fires. Larry, how about now?
I hope.
Can hear Larry, but you. That's what I just got.
Can you hear me?
Huh. So I don't know why I can't hear you, but I guess everybody else can hear you.
Tell him to turn his volume.
Turn your volume up. My volume's all the way up.
We'll find out how to do that.
All right, there you go. All right, so now I hear you. Good.
Oh.
Whatever you did. All right. Here we go.
What it was doing is it wasn't connecting my microphone, but I was unmuted. So anyway, here we go. Wherever you want to begin.
Let's pull it up now. There we go. All right.
All right. I don't know if you covered the first couple of slides or not. If you want to go to the top, or you want to start here.
I just introduced it, so you can you can just start it off right here at this slide, and we'll run from there.
All right. Here's what I guess I want to say. The newscasters either are choosing not to tell us the truth, or they don't have the big picture because they only focus on the events of the last week or two. So I felt I needed to do this. God came to me and said, hey, people need to know what this is about. So I'm going to bring in the Bible. Oh, you know what? Let me see something. Or maybe I do want you to go back up, because I want to bring in the biblical scriptures, because we need that to tie everything together.
Okay.
So, or maybe it's down. Go down to the one after the one you're on. Let's start with that. Going down one more.
There we go.
So here we go. Let's start here. So bottom line is we basically are in a situation where you have to understand this. You have to go all the way back 2,000 years, and you have to basically look at the Daniel's prophecies, and you have to look at what was happening. That was the seed of the hatred of radical Islam to Christianity. So here we're looking at Daniel 10:20, and it says a fractured Europe with feet of iron and clay. So that's all the way down at the bottom. That's the last kingdom. This is Daniel telling Nebuchadnezzar about the various kingdoms that would be formed from his time until the end. And preceding the European Union, the kingdom that's partly strong and partly weak, called the Holy Roman Empire. You had the Roman Empire. That was iron. It was as strong as iron. But now for all of our lifetime, we've been under the Holy Roman Empire, where basically power was ceded from Rome to the Catholic Church through the Pope, who then appointed the kings and took kings out, and the power then became sent through the church to the state. And that's the situation we're in right now. And if you listen to what Trump has been talking about for the last couple of months, he's calling Europe out. Europe is fractionalizing. It's falling apart. So we're seeing that prophecy from way, way, way back 2,000 years ago is now happening. Now, if we go to the next slide, we'll get the next biblical reference. And what we're going to see is that it's right in the Bible. If you just know the Bible, we go all the way back, and it's going up to Jeremiah 49. And what it said there is that there was a governmental entity in the Middle East that was called Elam, and that later became Persia, which is now modern day Iran, if you follow the maps. And so what you've got is, we're talking about Iran here in Jeremiah 9. And basically it's telling us that God was going to put a hook in Iran's mouth and turn them in another direction. And I'll give you some context for that. So what was basically happening is that God was saying in the Bible that Iran wasn't going to get what they wanted. They were, at that time, we didn't know the context, but it was describing a nation that was more powerful than you would think it was, given its geographic size. Well, what does the Bible tell us? It's all of our current conflicts are always about oil. So what do we know now? We know that they said on the Strait of Hormuz, they know that that's the blood lifeline for oil of the whole entire world. That gives them the inordinate amount of power that they have, but that power has been taken away because things that happened in the last few weeks since Trump started this war that say that we're no longer going to send 20% of our oil up through the Straits of Iran, of Hormuz rather. So what's happening is the other Arab nations have opened up the existing pipelines to maximum, and they're building new pipelines. And then as soon as they're done, basically what's going to happen is Iran is no longer going to be able to extort the world by controlling 20% of the world's oil. There'll be much less oil going through Iran than there is now. And so that's that hook that God said he would put in. And then we have to go down to another biblical scripture, and we have to say, well, where is the seed of hatred between Judaism and Islam? And then you have to include basically Christianity and Judaism. And it basically goes all the way back to Abraham. And when Sarah was promised, and Abraham was promised that they would have a child, when it didn't come immediately, he went to his servant and had Hagar and had Ishmael through him. And what did that birth? That birthed the spirit of the orphan. And so what happened is when the baby was young, Sarah said, tell Ishmael and Islam that they have to, Ismail, that they have to leave. So they went on to the desert where they almost died. But basically that created that spirit of the orphan that exists today, that is the foundation for the hatred between Judaism and between Islam. And what we need to realize is Islam is dedicated to controlling the entire world. So I want to take you through just a couple of little history points on here. Ishmael became an orphan spirit. That was the seed that basically has created that hatred in the world. We fought them back and forth in the Crusades for 1,400 years, yep. and neither nation ever got a strong foothold. And then in 1953, here's where the current hatred came in. In 1953, Iran had given exclusive rights to the Three Sisters oil. Remember, it's always all about oil. And they had exclusive rights to all the oil in Iran. Well, they got a democratically elected prime minister. And what did he do? He said, you are inflicting Western hegemony on us, and we're not making any real money off of this oil at all. So I'm going to nationalize the oil fields. And so then what happened? The Three Sisters Oil Company whimpered, and they came to Eisenhower. Remember, he was president now, but he was a general before. And they said, you've got to do something. So Eisenhower agreed, and he sicked the CIA on them, and they orchestrated a coup, and that led to the Shah of Iran coming in, which led back to a reversal where we re-implemented Western hegemony onto the nation. That created the seed over time where they hated us, and that led to what we saw on November 4th of 1979, where the revolt happened and the Islamic Republic was founded. And then just a few months later, when we made the attempt to get the hostages out, that was in April of 1980, basically it failed. And ever since then, those are the events that led up to where we are today. So let me stop, Michael. I think the people needed to have that historical, biblical background so that we can get into now the current times. Comments before we go on?
Yeah, it seems like Islam is basically captured by the dark side, and we're like you're talking about, it's trying to take over the world, and Lucifer is trying to take over the world through Islam.
And what I'd like to do is go through these remaining slides real quick, and then I'd like to get off the slides and have you and I have a conversation, a dialogue where we can talk about what's happening today. So here they are. They tell us it's right in our face. Islam will dominate the world. And there they are. And they're known in the Bible, as the pale horse whose weapon is a sword, and they cut people's heads off. So I did a show a few weeks ago where they marched a bunch of people out onto a beach in armed suits and cut their heads off. And so there they are. They're protesting. They're telling us we are going to dominate the world. And God had me read the Quran cover to cover, so I know wherever I speak. They basically are a religion of hatred. They say we're a religion of peace. So yes, they copied operative word. They copied the Bible. They basically tried to take over the throne of Christ by saying, well, the prophet keyword prophet. Christ is dead. Now we have a new prophet, Muhammad, and basically they were rejected by Israel. And so in the Bible, in the Quran, rather, I should say, it speaks of all the peace, all the kind of virtues that you see in the Bible. But then it says, but for the infidels, for anybody of any religion other than Islam, because they are idolaters and they are our enemies. And that is exactly what they're doing to this very day. So see if you go on to the next slide. And what we have here is a war that's going on that people don't identify as a war. And it's happening to Europe and it's happening to the United States. And that is where we created, in this instance, we orchestrated, they're always false flag events, we orchestrated the Arab Spring, and Syria had about 6 million refugees that left and went to Europe. And they're of a different culture than us. We have one wife and right now one husband, and on average we're having 1.5 children per family, not even the replacement rate. But when they came in there, they can have 3 or 4 wives. Each wife can have 2, 3, or 4 kids. And so they're reaching a situation now where through birth, they're becoming the majority populations throughout Europe, and it's causing a crisis. And then on top of that, both in the United States and in Europe, you can go to a travel agency and they have something called birthright visas. So you get yourself pregnant, put a bun in your oven, you apply for a visa, you come to the United States, you go to Europe, you drop that baby, and then here in the United States, since we have something called chain migration, you get to stay because now you're the guardian for that baby, and under chain migration, your husband can come and his family can come, and then each one of them who come are included in the chain migration, and that's how we get millions of people coming. Plus, why did Trump go in and invade Venezuela? Part of it was over the election fraud, but it was also a staging area for the caravans coming up through Mexico into the United States. So they've come at us and put millions of people, not all of them are from Muslim nations, but it's an army of insurrectionists within our country, because the people who want to bring us down understand America's too strong militarily to take from the outside. But if they could do an insurrection from the inside and outside at the same time, maybe we could fall. So something just happened the last couple of days, and I'm hoping that this trend is going to come to the United States. The European Parliament just voted overwhelmingly to expedite the export of Iranians, of people of Muslim origin who came in illegally since the Arab Spring War. So let me stop there and have you comment before we go on, and we'll race through the rest of these slides real quick.
Yeah, it's too little, too late. They're going to have to get really aggressive to turn this invasion back around. They're not going to give it up here in America, because they've been doing it for decades now. Under Obama, it really started to, under our Islamic president Obama, it really started to pick up speed, and it's continued under Biden. Really continued on a massive scale under Biden. Trump stopped in his first term, and they turned the spigot back on and turned it not into a spigot but a fire hose, bringing in these illegal immigrants, and they have really, come into America, and they're going to cause a lot of problems, And I know they're doing a lot of work to, get them out of the country, but they're not hitting 1 million a year. That's impossible. They're probably doing maybe 500,000 a year, going full bore. So we have 20 million, or maybe even 30 million, if we go all the way back to Obama time frame, of illegal immigrants here in America now, and that's quite an army.
It is. Let's go to the next slide, and that references the vote that was just made in Parliament. So that's what's happening. That's what's happening in Europe. And now if you go down to that very next slide, I want to tell you where they're going. So let's talk about what you just talked about a second ago. And that is it too little, too late? That picture showed throngs of people in the streets in Europe praying, right? They've done the same thing here in the United States. They put throngs of people out in Times Square. And basically they're demanding Sharia law. And as they get the majority population, they're demanding that, that they basically take over the country. Well, how are they doing it? Right now, you need to go and understand that the covert means of what they've been doing in the world through Iran, using Iran's proxies, and having perpetual. In my entire lifetime, I was born in 1947. I've seen nothing but conflict in the Middle East. Every time you turn around, they caught another fire, another war. And what does that do? People need to understand, if oil is the lifeblood of the world, if you can create these perpetual conflicts in the Middle East, which is the artery for that oil, then you drive up the cost of oil. And what that means is you drive up the cost of the necessities of life. So they've kept us in perpetual poverty through the shenanigans they have created in the Middle East, where basically we can't afford to buy food, water, housing, shelter, because it's all too expensive. And that's what they've been doing to us. So now we're talking about money. Let's go to the slide that you got up. They're not going to be able to have the money to have the proxy wars that they've had. We can talk about that in detail when we get through these slides. And they're not going to, I need to come back in and tell you one other thing that just happened in the last 48 hours. They thought they had a real synergy with Russia. They thought Russia was their superpower nation that would support them in the UN, that Russia had entered into a 20-year-long agreement with them to provide them with modern aircraft and to provide them with the replacement parts that they needed for their missiles, right? And part of the relationship was that Russia needed them for the drones because they had drone technology. Well, Putin doesn't need them anymore because now he's developed those drones in his own factories and he can meet the demand. And he doesn't want to be associated with a government whose regime looks like it's falling. So with no warning whatsoever, he just notified them all of that whole 20-year agreement that we agreed to is nullified. And so he's not going to protect them in the UN. He's not going to give them the military armaments that they provided. And he's going to stand off in the distance. And I think that China is probably going to come in and try to negotiate some terms for oil. But neither one of those superpower nations want to come against the United States, want to come against Israel, want to come against 31 nations that are now coming together finally in an alliance to say we have to end this situation with Iran. So they're very unpopular now. They're a pariah nation. So what's the course that they can follow going forward? It's one that they've been doing all along, and we just didn't see it. So when you're a refugee, you go into a country and all you got is a shirt on your back, right? That's it. That's all you got. So how is it that in America and in Europe, they have popped up gleaming mosques like these that cost tens of millions of dollars? It's because basically they've been funded by Arab nations who profess to be our friends, and it's Turkey and it's Saudi Arabia and other Arab nations. And then why do they want to do that? Because there's a political agenda behind the mosque, because then they tell the clerics what can be spoken from the mosque, and they have schools associated with them, and they say what the curriculum is going to be. So they are radicalizing people both in Europe and the United States through the money laundering that they do, that they send money to these mosques. So what's happening in Europe, and like you said, it's probably too little too late, but Spain is now leading the charge, because Spain is just geologically the location where most of the ships coming from Africa land. They land in Spain. And so Maloney has basically reached out to Trump and made some, I don't know if they're codified yet, but I know what they're talking about. They're talking about Spain wants to have some eyes in the sky so that they can see the ships as they're coming, so they can intercept them early. And they've agreed not to give us a base, but to allow to have some limited access to their ports. And they've even talked about doing something that further degrades the power of Europe, which is entering into some kind of a trade agreement with the United States. And the minute that word got out, 8 European nations stepped up and said, if Spain is able to negotiate these terms with the United States, we want to do the same thing. So again, we're back to the Bible. Everything that was foretold in the Bible has happened. And when we go to Europe, where does it fit in the Bible? So basically, Europe is in the Bible, and it is talked about in the final beast, the combination beast with 10 horns. And God took me to Revelation 13, and he said there shall be a time when there shall be 10 kings among whose heads crowns shall set for 1 hour. That then led me to the UN. This was years ago. And what did it talk about? It talked about the 10 horned beast, and it said that the UN has an objective to create 10 servile trading blocks with which it would control the world, because that creates the beast system. And the first of that beast system to be created and codified was the European Union. And the European Union said after World War II, if we don't come together as one great nation, we will never be a superpower again. And so they started the formation of the European Union, first as the trade agreement, and then they made it into a common currency, and then they tried operative word to get a constitution, but several of the nations understood that this was a socialist communist order, and they refused to agree to the constitution. So they got a treaty, and that has a loophole in it, which is what allowed Spain with Maloney to come to the United States and talk to Trump, so that they could get out from under the control. Because what they did to Spain is they had gone bankrupt because of all the cost that they were having bringing these illegal immigrants into the Spain as the place of demarcation. And so Germany and Brussels got together and they said, you know what we're going to do, Spain? We're going to declare you bankrupt, and we're going to take your money, and we're going to basically put you under the supervision of Germany. And Spain just was not going to tolerate that. So that's kind of some groundwork for all of this. Has to do with the war that we're in right now. So basically, let's go on down and finish these slides up real quick, and then let's try to have a conversation. So basically, present day, 2026, the RSCG has become the enemy of the people. And why do I say that? Because most people don't realize that in 1953, when all this started, when we orchestrated a coup and took out a democratically elected prime minister, that was the point that hatred, that was 47 years ago. So the people, most of the population wasn't even born then. And certainly the younger generation doesn't know anything about it. So that hatred has failed to flow through to current times with the degree to which it was. So most of the leaders of the RSCG are very old. They're people who were young adults when all of this began. And so now what's happened is the people have, through all of the sanctions, they've gone into real economic hardship. So in 2017, there was a protest over food prices. 2019, there was a protest over fuel. 2012, there was a protest over water. I think that's 2021. I got that backwards. 2022, a protest over women's rights. And now where we are, we're 2026, and they've metered down the internet, but they were somehow or other to get on TikTok. And the people sent messages out, and they came out into 31 different cities. This happened twice now, and the ROGC realized something. We don't have the manpower to put these down. So they weren't using their water cannons. They weren't using the rubber bullets. They weren't firing live ammunition. They weren't arresting people. They weren't hanging people in the square, because they understand they had lost the support of the population. One brigade of regular military, 8,000 men, walked out. And so basically they understand that the support that they had is not there, because they have arrested people and imprisoned them, because they have hung people. They are now the enemy. Now the general population looks at them as the enemy, and not the United States, and not the event that started in 1953. And so the whole calculation for the IRGC is basically null and void at this time. And if you look at that very first slide I had up when we came on, when we finally got my volume, it had a picture of a woman in a burqa. And what was that all about? That was about the fact that the women have zero rights. You just passed it up. They have zero rights on the nation. Oops, you're going past it. Go up, go up, go up, go up, go up, go up, up one more. Stop. Nope, you went too far. Go down. There you go. So there we are. There's the woman in the burqa. is that the opposite. We're saying Western hegemony is dead. And Donald Trump is saying we're going to have the Monroe Doctrine he instituted in the Western Hemisphere. And to prove that he's doing what he said, he went into Argentina and he bailed them out. They were about to have a bond collapse. And he's saying we are going to help all the nations from Mexico to Latin America to South America rebuild their infrastructures, be able to get access to the natural resources and not have to ship it out for pennies on the dollar as raw resources, but be able to get finished goods. And so everything is changing and it's coming into where it is an advantage to the West, advantage to America, advantage to the people of Iran. And most people don't realize that in Iran right now today, God said that they would have visions and that your old men would have visions. And what they're doing is there are people who are getting visions of Christ, and there's more people converting to Christianity in Iran than any other nation in the world. And China, by the way, is number 2. And that's because when you live in a tyrannical government and you can hear anything about Christianity, it's a Christianity, it's a religion of peace and a religion of love. And so basically, it's really important that that's happening in Iran, because once you say the call to prayer, which Barack Obama called the most beautiful sound he's ever heard, and to chime in with what you said, he was asked on the Lear report about his faith, and he mistakenly said, "You mean my Muslim faith?" And when we were having some conflicts, he said, "If the tide ever turns against my Muslim brothers," and he called the Quran the Holy Quran, he says, "I will stand with my Muslim brothers." So basically that is what's been inflicted upon Iran and upon the United States, starting all the way back with the Carter administration, when we started ceding power from the United States through NAFTA, an intentionally losing trade agreement to Europe. And just as a little more background in history, when NAFTA was formed through Carter at the behest of the global financial elite puppets, we were 200 years old. That was just 50 years ago. And we only had a $660 billion national debt. And with every succeeding president, that debt doubled and tripled. And now it's $39 trillion. So I hope that people are seeing how all this fits together. And the world has now got a chance to come together and to make peace in the Middle East. So now let's go on down and see if we can finish these slides real quick. And then I want us to have a conversation. So going down to where we left off. So basically, we're back again to just summarize. It all started with the Bible. It all started when we realized that we're now in the final kingdom. We're in the kingdom who's not strong. The kingdom is partly clay and partly iron, and that kingdom is represented by Europe, which is represented in the Bible as the combination beast that brings war upon the world. And so now, finally, Donald Trump is making us aware of who our enemy is. We have been sleeping with our enemy for decades. We were brought into World War I on the side of Europe, when we should have been on the side of Germany, because they called us up one day and they said, "We got a deal for you. We need to go to war because we can't have Germany becoming the economic superpower of Europe, and we can't have you building all these transcontinental railroads, because if you do, we'll lose control of trade by the sea. And so we're orchestrating this war, and here's what we got for you, America. We're going to be fine because we're on an island, and the war is going to be fought on the mainland, and our economy is based on colonies all around the world. So we're going to be fine. We'll just stir the pot. We'll bring Europe down and decimate. And America, you can provide all the armaments for the war, and you can rebuild the nations after it's over, and it'll make you even more powerful." And our corrupt politicians said, "Deal." And we went into the war on the side of Europe, when we were actually, at the time, the greatest supporter we had in Europe was Germany. So that hopefully brings us up to speed on all of the loose ends, the politically and geopolitically within the world. And we can just get out of the slide presentation. All I have to say is, buy my book. It's got all this and more in it. So now let's see if we can't bring up some comments and get some comments from you. So what do you know about the Board of Peace? Go ahead, make a comment before I go on.
Yeah, this peace agreement that they have is just a little pause in the overall war, I believe. Who knows? It might kick off here pretty soon, or it may just drag along. The only way that this stops is if that illegal group that's been in power for 47 years in Iran is taken out and the people take over.
Well, let me make a comment and see what you're saying. I know what the IRCG wants. I know why they're fighting so hard because if the war ends and peace breaks out, the whole reason for their existence is gone. Or rather, I should say, half of the reason is gone because they're already viewed as a pariah, right? So what's the other thing that keeps them in power? Most people don't realize that they're more than just a military and an ideological force. They're also an economic force. They control somewhere between, depending on who you're talking to, 25% and 40% of all the economic resources of Iran. And they have construction companies and all kinds of companies that they run as businesses, right? So I stepped down and I looked at this and I said, the people are coming against them and not having any water than they are of the IRCG. And already people are saying, we're not going to fight our own people. These are our people. So now I want to bring in the hand of God, and I want to share with you some things that have happened to make some parallels back to Europe. So Europe, following World War II, they made some mistakes, and China has made some mistakes. And guess what? Iran is repeating those same mistakes. So when we go over to Europe, what did they do after World War II? They said, oh, we'll never be a superpower unless we conglomerate. So that was the basic formation of the European Union, all those nations coming together. It wasn't a 10-nation coalition. That was talking about the trade agreements that they were going to form, but it was, I think, at its peak, a 28-nation coalition. And then what they said, we've got to pull together, and now we'll be a big enough force population-wise and economically that we can be up there with the United States and China and Russia, blah, blah, blah. That's our stake to reestablish ourselves in the world. Well, what happened over in Iran said, well, we've got to have a mass of people because we need to be able to have some power too. So what did they do? They put out the exact opposite of what China said. China said, we have too many people. We have to have the one-child program. And now they're to a point where they say within 10 years, there'll be more people in the pens than there will be people in diapers. And they're going to have the oldest population in the world. And that cracks the structure of economically. So now let's go to Iran and see how they paralleled those two nations and what they've done. And they said they've given all kinds of incentives to the people, saying, we need you to have more people, more babies, more babies, more babies, more babies. And their population has doubled since 1953. It's now 96 million people. And here's what those people did behind the scenes. They've known this forever and ever and ever, and they chose to ignore it. Remember, it's a desert. That's what it is. They're in a desert. And with all these new people, this doubling of their population, that means they have to double the output of water. And where's it coming from? It's coming from their aquifers. They have 8 dams, and those reservoirs are virtually empty. They're standing at 3 to 4% of pool. And right now in the capital, in Tehran, they themselves are saying, we may have to move the capital. Why? Because there's no water coming out of the pipes. They're bone dry. They've dried up their aquifers. This is now the hook in the mouth that God was talking about that we saw in the beginning. So basically their aquifers are dry, and that means famine's on the way unless they do something. So what are they going to be forced to do? Instead of spending money on ballistic missiles and on rebuilding their Navy and their Air Force, they're going to have to do what their Arab nations have done, and they're going to have to embark on building massive desalination plants so that they can have drinking water for their population. Right now, it's so bad that the nation that has all this oil doesn't have it refined into fuel, and they're running out of oil. And where are they getting the water right now? They're bringing it in by tanker, and people are taking vessels and getting water from tankers, and they won't even be able to run their tankers. So now everything is heating up even more, because just what happened is they said to the people, Well, with all these financial difficulties we have, we're no longer going to be able to fund the bread program. And so now they don't have water, and now they don't have bread, and now they're having rapid inflation. And now the people are going to where the Bible always takes us. This started as a kinetic war, and it's going to end up as a siege. And in a siege, there's only two outcomes. So they are going to go against the IRCG, and the IRCG, at least the regular army, is going to side with the people, and you're going to see the IRCG come down. Now, what does that leave them? If I'm a high-ranking person in the IRGC, I'm going to make this final understanding. The people are against me. How can I stay in power? How can I have some remnants of power? Here's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to accept the $132 billion aid package that's being provided, not by the United States, but offered by their Muslim brothers. And they're going to have to build desalination plants. And then what they're going to do is they're going to parallel what happened after World War I and after World War II. That money is going to flow in to the corporations owned by the IRGC. They will be the ones who will run the construction projects that rebuild, and that will be the anchor of which they retain some power. So that's the way I've analyzed this and broke it down. They do not have and will not have. So there's more things happening. So they thought that the biggest power they had was leverage over the Strait of Hormuz. And we'll close it. We'll close it. Well, they closed it. And who suffered the most? They suffered, because Trump has planned this for an eternity, and he was able to say, because of what happened in Venezuela, because of what happened with us opening up our wells, we now have more oil than Saudi Arabia and Russia combined. And he made provision for Japan and China and the other nations to have enough oil, at least, that they didn't have to shut their manufacturing down. Yes, it's been stressful. Yes, prices went up. But now in the midst of all of this, what happens? You need to go to the Board of Peace, and we need to bring in another thing that's happening that people don't understand. When we go to Gaza, and Gaza was literally leveled, Trump came in and said, I'll rebuild it. I'll build skyscrapers. I'll build golf courses. Well, there's more going on than that. And he got permission to do that, and he established the Board of Peace. But the Board of Peace is doing something else that people don't realize. Modi had an idea about 2 years ago, and now it looks like it's actually going to be brought into codification. He wanted to have a supply chain that would give an alternative to China's Belt and Road, and it would be a sea lane from India to Saudi Arabia and all the way across all of the Middle East, terminating at Haifa in Israel, and then becoming a water passage from there to Europe. And that is going to relieve enough oil supply coming down to the Strait of Hormuz that when this is over, that along with the other pipelines that the Arab nations are building, they're not going to have that stranglehold on the world. They'll never, within the next couple of years, when all this gets done, they'll never be able to say we can control 20% of the oil and choke the world. So the Straits of Hormuz is becoming much less strategically significant. And so all of the playing cards that they have on the table are being systematically one by one taken away from them. So now what are we doing with this? The most sophisticated logistics network that we've ever seen. It's going to be funded probably by money from the Arab nations, from the United States, and from India. It's going to be done under the Board of Peace, and it's going to contain a payment system. And my bet is that at least a large portion of that's going to be conducted in U.S. dollars. It's going to contain technology that we're going to have from Donald Trump, where you bring those cargo ships in and a whole fleet of drones drop down and read all those tags, and customs is expedited, and they can get those containers off on the railroad cars immediately. And when it gets to Haifa, the same thing happens. The drone come down, they put them on the ships, and they're saying that it will be able to be 30% faster and 40% cheaper. Now, let's analyze why oil has been able to be kept so high for all these years in the Middle East and how that trump card is being taken out. Because here's what's happening. Basically, the whole dynamic, I just lost my train of thought. Let me see if I can get it back. So
the price of oil, and Trump's been dominating that with the...
Yeah, so basically what's going to happen is the cost of oil is to a large part controlled by England, which this came out in the last few months as well through Lloyd's of London. And most people don't know that Lloyd's of London insures every commercial vehicle in the ocean. And what did they say? Very first thing when this started, we are refusing to give any insurance to any of these ships, period. That means they set out there because their owners weren't going to put them at jeopardy if they didn't have insurance. And so later, gradually, they've given insurance back, but at exorbitant prices. Some of the ships that have gone through the straits have paid up to $2 million for a passage. And so that, along with everything else, keeps the cost of oil up, meaning that the people of the world have a hard time buying the necessities of life. Well, that's all going to change because the Board of Peace, it is going to eventually, in my opinion, replace the UN. And within it, it is a business venture because Trump doesn't do anything unless it has a strong ROI. So he's going to rebuild Gaza, and that's going to be an amazing hub for technology, an amazing place for it's like the Riviera of the Middle East. But he's got money, and what happened is 26 nations have already joined the Board of Peace at $1 billion per nation, and more will come, and eventually it will replace the UN. And then what else is he doing? You've got a military background. You'll appreciate this. He's saying the cost of oil is significantly governed by risk. And so that's Lloyd's of London and the excruciatingly high cost for insurance. And so he is going to have, under the Board of Peace, a military private army of 20,000 men paid for through the Board of Peace, not through Congress, not through our government. And then as these projects need to be built and we need to go a step beyond that, and we need to get access to some of these energy technologies that we know are out there from the Chevron deal that Trump got through. That says we have 5,915 patents that he says are real technology that just have to be scaled. If we go to Congress and Congress says we're not going to fund it, he doesn't care. You know why? Because he set up an investment bank within the Board of Peace and funded it initially with $210 billion. And that will be the seed money that will cause private investors to come in. So he's just changed the entire equation in the entire Middle East and, in fact, in the entire world. And he's made the ability of any nation to drive oil prices up because of shortages or to drive them up because of the cost, the risk factors associated. And then along with that, you need to understand one other thing that happened. And that is that this war was orchestrated and planned. You know, you're a military guy, for probably years. And what happened when this war happened? Donald Trump knew, the Muslim nations knew that Iran was going to try to cut off the oil valves. And so not only were they going to close the strait, but what they were going to do was they were going to attack oil interests in the Muslim nations. And so what did we do? That changed the calculus of the entire world and makes peace possible. We gave the Iron Dome to Israel, right? So as those missiles came through, they were protected. But guess what? The Arab nations were protected too because we gave them the missiles that, to use another term, was their version of the Iron Dome. And to get those, there was an agreement reached. They had to go in and agree to join the Abraham Accords, which lays the foundation for peace. So the only nation in the whole Middle East that isn't going to be on it at this time is going to be Iran. And so all of the Muslim nations are coming together and saying, we're tired of being constantly afraid that our oil is going to be blown up, our pipelines are going to be sabotaged. We want peace. So now it's incumbent on Iran to say the only path forward is to accept the olive branch that the Muslim nations are putting out in the form of an aid package of $132 billion so that they can rebuild their infrastructure. And then they're quickly going to find out that they won't have to be sanctions. They won't have to sell their oil at 30% discounts to China, and they'll be able to rebuild their nation. And yes, in fact, they don't need to hate the United States or any of the Muslim nations because, in fact, their whole economy is going to be improved. They'll be able to build the infrastructure to have water. They'll be able to have food, and they'll be able to have a viable economy, and they won't have to live in slavery, and the women will have rights, and the people will be be able to live and not have to be in total economic slavery right now, which is where they're at right now. So I kind of took over, unfortunately, and I just spit all that out. So let me shut up and you come back in and break some of that down from your perspective, if you would.
Yeah, I think that we're moving in that direction. It's absolute that this is going to happen. Where once this regime has collapsed and Reza Pahlavi, does a transition, whatever happens there, he's behind the scenes coordinating the people to overthrow the regime. So once it's done, however it happens, whether we come back in and we pave the way for them, I think it's very easy to do. I've been talking about this for quite some time. The special forces guys are probably already on the ground. They can supply weapons and training and so forth in very short order to the people that will take down the different groups. That there's no way that they can resist that. And then you have air superiority. It could happen very, very quickly. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about it. I know it's going to happen, like you were talking about. How it happens remains to be seen. I think we're going to have a good election. I think the SAVE Act eventually will be passed. I think they're pushing it to almost to the end, because that's going to catch those people that are going to try and manipulate the voting again. It catches them off guard. They don't have a plan. They don't know how to. They won't know how to plan because it'll be so fast and come at them so quickly. They need time to do that, and they're not going to have that. So I think that's one of the reasons why the SAVE Act is being, delayed like it is. I think that's part of the plan.
I agree completely. And I think it's called Card Island, Card Island. So this is some of the stuff you were talking about. We basically went in there and took out everything except the operational portion. So basically we control the refineries that control their oil. So right there. And then I think it's the Kurd forces that want to come into this. They want to be armed, and they want, well, I don't know if we're going to do it, but they may not have to do it, because I think that if the people who are currently in charge of the RCG sit down and really look at it, the only choice they have is an economic surrender. Now, the one thing that does scare me, and maybe you can comment from your background, they've set their military up so that it's decentralized. And so basically they could have some rogue somewhere that could do something that would be pretty bad militarily, and it could threaten this whole peace agreement, whatever. But I think that in the final analysis, the IRCG is now the enemy of the people. And to substantiate something you said, who is Raza Pahlavi? People, I don't know if people know this. He's the son of the Shah. So the Shah is the one that they hated, that originally ginned up all of this animosity and created the birth of the Republic of Iran and all of this hatred. And so now the people are calling for him to come back, because they know he's aligned with the West, and they know he's aligned with the Muslims and the rest of the Middle East, and they know that he's going to probably be able to bring peace to the region. So that substantiates, again, that the whole context of the hatred is now so old that it no longer has any real relevance among the majority of the population. So I just see, I wanted to do this show because I'm hearing the Democrats and I'm hearing the news people saying, oh, we're worse off than we were. We should have stayed with the Barack Obama's deal. Barack Obama, the man who said, if this turns bad, I'm going to stand with my Muslim brothers. And man, the greatest sound I've ever heard, music to my ears, is the call to prayer. And so basically, no, there were not enough provisions in that. They had all kinds of lead time for the inspections, and there was no way we were ever going to stop them from having a nuclear weapon. So now there are other people saying, well, they didn't really have a nuclear weapon. It's just like what happened in the Iraq war. Well, maybe they didn't have a nuclear weapon, but they were on the path to it. And how I say that that's got some degree of evidence behind it is because what is the one thing over all these years that they've never been willing to give up? Pursuit of a nuclear weapon, right? And so that, along with control of the Strait of Hormuz, was their absolute, that was their their power that was going to allow them to hold the world at hostage. Both of those powers are being taken away now, and now they're just going to be one more nation among many, and they're not going to control the lifeblood of the world, and they're not going to be able to leverage the cost of oil and therefore the cost of necessities. So if we look at this thing, it's just like where we started. God put the hook in their mouth, and they are now going to be forced into joining their other Muslim nations. Now, I want to say something, and I hesitate a little bit of doing this, because we're entering into the Abraham Accords, because we've provided military protection to the Muslim nations. I don't think we should be naive and believe that the war that started all the way back 2,000 years ago in the Bible isn't going to go on. The hatred between Christianity and Islam still exists. And so what are we going to see? We're going to see the continuation of the funding of the mosque, the continuation of the massive immigration into the United States and into Iran, the continuation of the birth that's going to allow them to hopefully, in their minds, outbirth the United States and Europe, and eventually have Islam be dominant over the entire world. That is not going to go away. It's just going to be subtle, and it's going to be behind the scenes, and that's why we need to know, the kind of details that we're releasing here today. So back to you, Michael.
Yeah, I think that people are fed up with it. I think we're going to see another crusade to basically stop that. I've talked about this for a couple of years now, that I see that we're probably going to reach a boiling point, and I'm starting to see it on social media where people are saying, President Trump, you need to come in and fix this, or we're going to fix it. And so I hear that more and more. We're seeing it in other countries. We've seen it in the Scottish, who's the other group that's rioting? The Irish. So the Irish, after they had some Islamists try and saw off the head of a guy in the street, that was enough. It broke. So the floodgates are broken. The pushback is going to happen, whether the government gets involved or the people get involved. It's going to happen. We've been, like you talked about, we go through this cycle. It seems like every 400 years. I don't think this time we're going to stop, because we're seeing the pattern, and we're seeing the truth of what they're trying to do, and we're not going to allow it. It's just going to be, I think more and more people are seeing it's not a religion of peace. It's a religion of domination, control, and evil. So it is going to turn on them.
Absolutely. And I'm trying to think of what you just said a second ago when you were talking just now. The power has been ultimately taken away from. It was about we have to do something, or else they're going to take over the United States. Well, now here's what we're doing. Trump has just come out and said there's not going to be any Sharia law in the United States of America. So we need to break that down. People don't understand that Sharia law doesn't supplant our Constitution currently, as in the form that they're coming. It's mostly for domestics. But what do? They say they're going to take over our families. They're going to marry our daughters, and they're going to convert them to Islam, and then they're going to outbirth us, and they're going to take over. So Trump has said no Sharia law ever in our lifetime, and they're trying to give voting rights out in California again to illegal immigrants. So we're going to have to stop that. And then what is trying to come down through the Supreme Court? Now this hasn't happened, but we're trying to basically get legislation or a verdict, if you will, that's coming down from the Supreme Court that says if you have dual citizenship, you can't hold office in the United States. That says goodbye to all of those politicians that are over here that have their loyalty to Islam. They're going to be removed. So basically goodbye to all of you guys. And then what are we going to do? We're talking about money laundering, and we're exposing money laundering around the entire world, right? And so that means we're going to parrot part of what Europe is doing. And here's another thing that they're doing. They're saying, We know what you're doing. We know you're radicalizing people, and we know that you're getting your money through money laundering coming from the Muslim nations. And so now we're going to put tight observation on all the money that comes into you, and anything that we can tag that has anything to do with radical Islam. We are not only going to confiscate the money, we're going to close your mosque. So there's things that we can do, and Europe is probably now going to do the most aggressive things because they've gone maybe past the point of no return, but we can learn from what they're doing. And with Donald Trump's aid, we can pass more legislation. We're going to get control of the voting rights, and we're going to get the bills put through that we need to put through. And then we need to reflect on what Europe just did. Europe just basically said, we voted overwhelmingly to expedite the the deportation of these Muslims coming in to take over our nations. So what we need to do is basically crank up that megaphone and say, folks, all you people who are fighting ICE, you need to stand down. You need to see the crisis that's occurring in Europe, and we need to get these people out of here because they are an army of insurrection. So it's going to take political will, but I think that there are tangible things that we can do, and it's not too late in America yet. But we do need to stand up and take action very, very, very soon. So back to you, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, it's a narrative. You push the narrative, and people get on board with it, and then a lot of times you'll bypass violence. Violence can be and has been, averted. Now, I think that there's operations that are ongoing and have been ongoing for over a year now to remove a lot of the very, very negative types that were going to cause violence. I've seen video of it. I see the, little slivers of guys moving around that somebody takes a picture of, or somebody takes a video of. Those are the guys that I used to be. All right. So the guys that move at 0 dark 30 and take care of business, and they're doing it here in the United States. Probably on some level they are in, Europe, but we'll see. It can be averted. We just have to, work together and, have good discussions and not let things get out of hand. I know in Ohio they're raising flags, Somali flags, and people are pretty pissed about that. That's one of the things I was alluding to, as far as people are saying we're not going to put up with this. So yeah, we're not going to put up with it, but we don't have to start going violent, because we saw that happen. I think in Scotland or Ireland or something. I think a Scottish guy went.
I think it was Scotland, I believe.
What's that?
I believe you're right. It was Scotland, I believe.
Yeah. So a guy, I guess, people came out of a mosque, or he went into a mosque or something and started, chopping people. So, I mean, we're right at that level. So the narrative really has to happen, that governments are going to and that might be why, Europe is we're stopping illegal immigration, and we're going to start to, I don't think they've said they're going to start shipping people out yet, but they need to say that.
The vote just happened. Just happened.
Yeah.
In the last 24 to 48 hours. Going back to something you said a minute ago, the approach is changed. So for decades, what the global elite have pushed us, it doesn't mean we're going to have perpetual peace. It means we're going to go into the period of time where the Bible prophecies are fulfilled. So let's go over and see, as we get ready to close this, are we really going to get into any kind of period of peace and prosperity? And I think absolutely we are. So basically, Trump has already ended 8 wars, and now we're on the brink, it looks like, of maybe ending the war in Iraq. And things have been happening in Russia that say, and I don't think those two sides can go on much longer. Some very critical things have happened there. So I predict, this is a prediction, we'll see them come to the table to negotiate something fairly quickly. And here it's because of late changes that have happened in the last just few weeks. Basically, while all of this war has been going on for, 3 years now, the Europeans have been basically funding the war to keep it going, but they've also been doing something. They've been quietly behind the scenes building alternative supply routes for oil. So they have been almost completely dependent on oil coming from Russia, right? Yeah. So finally, I believe something happened. I see what did happen, and I'm making a supposition as to why it was allowed to happen. Basically, the principal Achilles heel that Russia has is they have an economy that's largely controlled by oil and natural gas. Well, that's never a good formula for a nation. The first nation that I can go back as far as I follow back that was given the honor of being the world's reserve currency was the Dutch, and they fell because they had a single source economy. And then the Spains, because the Spanish 2 weeks ago, Ukraine has been reaching deeper and deeper into Russia and hitting the oil refineries. Hit them over and over again. Hit them before they can repair. Hit them again. Hit them again. Hit them again. And now something happened that I don't think would have happened if some way or other behind the scenes the European nations hadn't blessed it. And that is that Ukraine went in and took out the central pipeline that supplies the oil to Europe. Now, you need to do more than just take out a couple of sections of pipes. So what did they take out? They took out the pumping stations. That is a major break in the supply chain. So now let's go back to what's happening with that program that I talked about, which is the new logistics pathway that is probably going to be built that's going to give an opportunity, an option for something other than China's Belt and Road. So with that, there's something else. There is not only underwater fiber optics, there's not only a payment system, there's not only a system for expediting loading and unloading of cargo ships, but there's a high voltage power cable that will run from Israel to Europe. So what's that mean? There's no place in the world where solar works other than in a desert. So part of the reason that you're seeing the European Union revolt the way they're revolting is because Brussels, a wholly unelected bureaucratic communist government, has forced the Green Deal on people and forced the immigration on people and bankrupt Europe. And so now what are we doing? We're giving money, $132 billion olive branch to Iran. And what are we doing for Europe? We're giving them a high-powered cable that's going to send energy from the solar panels, the vast solar farms in the desert to Europe, so they have an alternative power supply, plus the alternative routes that they have already created themselves. So now they're not nearly as dependent on oil as they were. The whole dynamics of the world is changing, and it's just like the Bible said, it's all related to oil. So I believe what we're going to see is another Bible prophecy come true. I believe Russia came out too soon, and in the Bible, they're called the sleeping bear. And so now I think this war is going to end. They're not going to have the military power that they've had. They're not going to have the money that they had. It's going to take them a long time to rebuild and regroup. Then in the depths of the book of Revelation, they'll come back out and they'll become a military force to fear again. But right now, in my opinion, and I'd like you to comment on it, I think they've been neutered. They just took out their largest ammunition plant, and now they're depending on munitions coming from, of all places, North Korea. I mean, I just see the hand of God all over this. So and then to make it even worse for Russia, the permafrost is melting. And what's that doing for a nation that now has monetary problems because of the war? It costs untold amounts of money to maintain the supply line, 3,000 miles long from Moscow to the oil fields. And basically, they don't have the money to keep it up properly. So something has to change. And I think this war has to end. So I think that the Bible was telling that right. This war is going to end. And then we're going to have the Abraham Peace Accords come into place, and we're going to have peace in the Middle East, and that is going to reduce the cost of oil, and that is going to raise the standard of living for people in every nation of the world. And it's all coming together. And then the last biblical context is more dangerous to Iran than any military bombardment from us, than any embargo, is what God has allowed them to foolishly do. They pumped their water out of their aquifers at a rate that was absolutely unsustainable, and now their aquifers are dry. And what do you do if you're a nation that has no water? You have to concede, because even the IRGC has to have water to drink. So I see the hand of God from the beginning to the very end in all of this. I don't see any choice except for what happens every time there's a siege: surrender. And when they surrender, they get the olive branch, and then they can rebuild.
Yeah, that's great. So I don't know about the Russia deal. I think Russia is on the good side. Everything I see about Ukraine is absolute evil, Nazi, and all kind of crazy stuff. So, yes, there is some ongoing problems, evidently, with the fuel, and that could get out of hand. It could bring Russia to its knees. You're right. So,
Yeah.
So God works.
I need to almost interrupt you, because you said something that's absolutely I gotta agree with you on. I'm not saying Russia's on the wrong side of this. I'm just saying that the Bible says that they're going to go back to sleep. So I know the whole story of people don't understand that there's not a sovereign nation in the world. They're all controlled by the banking institution that controls the money, that controls the power. And they don't understand that Ukraine is a center for money laundering, that it's a center for illegal labs to create viruses. It's got the remnant of the Ashkenazi Jews, the Jews who weren't Jews. And so, yes, absolutely. But what I was just pointing at was
17 others laughed at it.
Is just basically the fact that economics is what's going to end this war. And I think that both sides are bleeding out economically, and I think it's going to bring them to the table. But I think that much of what Russia had to achieve has probably been achieved. And so I know I believe from the very beginning, we go back to the capitulation tour, and I think that Trump said Israel is last. Israel has to come last. And I think that we've seen that nations one after another have capitulated. And I'm trying to think of it. I should know this off the top of my head. Derek Johnson. We owe a thanks of gratitude to Derek Johnson by going into the military law of war manual and deciphering all this. And so for those who maybe need a little refresher, here's some of the cues that he brought out. Trump went on a capitulation tour around the world. The first place he went was to Saudi Arabia. And the day he got there, they arrested the crown prince. And basically then they had a ceremony, the sword ceremony, where the new crown prince is given the sword. Nobody is to touch it, but the new crown prince, they handed it to Donald Trump. He goes over to Europe, and he walks in front of the Queen. Nobody is allowed to do that. And then he walked off the stage when he was on the stage with the president of Argentina, which has got affiliations going back to World War II with the Nazis. Yep. And one by one, he showed us that these nations have capitulated. And then, according to reports that have come out, the Pope capitulated, and there's that famous picture of Trump smiling. And supposedly we took out 660 plane loads of gold. So we have all the gold we need. So folks, don't worry about BRICS, because when the time comes, we're going to step up and be going to a gold-backed system, and their power has been taken away from them, because guess what happened? So just like India is helping us get this new logistics channel, they've agreed to, probably with a little coercion from Trump, but to exit the BRICS. And Russia has done the same thing, again, substantiating what you said. They're on our side. So I just see the walls of resistance are crumbling at every single solitary juncture we can imagine. We're going to have a period of peace. And that goes back to the Bible again, because what did God say? He says, we're not getting deep into that book of Revelation until I restore I restore my church. I'm coming for a spotless church, and I'm coming for a world that has had Christianity all around the world. And so he's calling America to use America one more time to basically bring revival. But the sad irony of that is that through control of America by the global financial elite, they've said openly that we will bring America down if we can control their patriotism, their family values, and their Christian values. They will fall from within. And so they have used the lying media, our politicians, and the entertainment industry to send to the world debauchery at a level that it's never been done since Sodom and Gomorrah. So America does have some things that we have to atone for, but under a president that prays to God, that I believe has been anointed by the Holy Spirit, America is now going to have that revival, because people around the entire world are working up because of the suppression. And so God is a loving God. That the Israelites were in slavery for 400 years so that he could bring them to the point that they would bend the knee to the Lord. And what the world has been facing for my entire lifetime was as an ongoing process to bring the world to a point where we would bend the knee and we would accept God, and we would begin to do something very important. We would understand that the two most important passages on the Bible were asked of Christ, and when he responded, the most important thing in the world is to love thy Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy soul. The second is to love thy neighbor as thyself. And what is beginning to happen is the whole world is beginning to come together and understand we have one enemy, the global financial elite and the forces of evil. And we're now going to have a situation where we're going to have probably a pole shift. I know you talk about that, and we're probably going to have a spiritual revival that goes around the world, and even a demonically controlled America is still going to be used by God to lead that revival that sets the fires of revival open around the entire world. So I see it all coming together as one holistic whole, and the enemy has lost. They lost before they ever started, and it was all foretold in our Bible. So that's all I got, unless you got anything else.
No, that's amazing. Great presentation. Glad we figured out the sound issue. So that's one of the best shows ever. Thanks.
Thank you. And by the way, I'm queuing up something that goes beyond this with the financial reset that people are challenging for and hoping for and praying for. I've just spent the last several weeks, and I have queued up 8 shows, every one of which is deep dives on different aspects of the finances of the world. And I think people are going to be hungry for that message.
Very good. Wow. Well, looking forward to it, Larry.
Oh, thank you. And I'm looking forward to coming on next time. What I think happened is my camera was picking up the camera, but the microphone is a part of it. It wasn't picking up the 360 microphone, and so I had to go in and do a reboot on the microphone. That took a little bit of time, but we did it. We did it. The technically inept me finally pushed the right buttons and got us on.
Yeah, we had some people in the chat. People could hear you, so we fixed it.
Okay. Well, anyway, thank you so much for having me, especially since it's Father's Day. So I want to say to you, Happy Father's Day, and to all of the people out there listening. So I hope this opens some eyes, and I hope why I really did this, maybe the last thing I want to say is I needed to bring to bear the truth so that we could see what the lying media is telling us and what the politicians are telling us. But mostly I did it for the people, because I think the people are really afraid. And why I'm doing this set of shows on the finances to follow this is because this is going to lead us to the reset. And people need to understand the details of this reset in total detail, and what the overall message is going to be from this set of financial slides is, if you're prepared, if you understand the things that I'm going to be telling them, then history tells us that people go into a financial collapse and either lose everything they have or if they're prepared and they know where to move their money and they know what to do, some of the biggest billionaires in the world were made during times of financial collapse. So there is hope there as well as with what we just talked about here. So with that, Michael, I just want to say thanks to you, thanks to Tracy, and we'll talk again soon, hopefully with a working microphone.
Very good, Larry. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye, Michael.
Bye-bye.
Hello, Patriots. I'm at Restored Republic via a GCR update filed by Judy Byington. Biden wasn't Biden. Obama thought to have run the Biden administration. Biden's so-called presidential inauguration believed to be his funeral. Trump promises aid in every major city by Monday, June 22nd, 2026. Hope so. Judy note, on New Year's Day 2021, Delta forces raided Joe Biden's 200-acre property in Ukraine, where they found a maze of underground chambers and tunnels that ran for miles in every direction. Bits of necrotic flesh hung from ankle and wrist shackles bolted to the walls. The next day, Biden was placed under arrest and released wearing his very own ankle bracelet. He was suspected to have been played by actors and doubles ever since. His so-called inauguration was said to have actually been an extension of his funeral. And just a side note, Derek Johnson has gone into that extensively, how you can tell that it was a military-grade funeral. Back in 2021, in Biden's Ukraine underground tunnel, seized laptops were said full of evidence of a massive international money laundering, child human trafficking scheme that appeared connected to other high-profile elites. A year later, in February 2022, when the Russian army entered Ukraine, their mission appeared to be a far cry from what was reported in the mainstream media. By April of that year, they had carried thousands of tortured, mainly Asian children out of U.S.-owned and run bioweapon labs, underground tunnels, and there were videos circulating showing Russian soldiers what we thought we knew but didn't really know, now are supposed to know but don't have a clue. With clones, doubles, made-up movies, Hollywood-style, Trump's military lines throwing more popcorn at us, it gets so confusing. Friday, June 19, 2026, saving Israel for last meant that Trump had to keep the enemy of deep state globalist Netanyahu close, stabilize the region, dismantle the proxy networks, lock Iran into containment, reposition Syria, isolate Hezbollah, and then expose Netanyahu and his deep state globalist need for endless war, thus removing their protection system. Trump D-class revelation on Telegram. Friday, June 19, 2026. Robert Greenway, the architect of Trump's Abraham Accords, just torched Obama's Iran deal. Obama didn't stop the threat of Iran's nuclear weapon, he funded it. In 1863, in a Rothschild's attempt to take over America, their allies, France and Spain, invaded Mexico with 30,000 troops. Britain, France, and other European powers were ready to snuff out the young republic of the U.S., but were deterred by Russia, the only European nation not in the Rothschilds' thrall. Tsar Alexander II sent his fleets to New York and San Francisco and declared that an attack on the United States was an attack on Russia. Meanwhile, the U.S. Congress, stimulated by Lincoln, created greenback dollars to finance the war and escape indebtedness to the foreign financiers. They, the Rothschilds, understood at once that the United States would escape their grip. Nothing was easier than to find a fanatic to strike. Friday, June 19th, breaking news. White Hats confirm Phase 1 of the Great Global Transition begins with massive blackouts in major U.S. cities. Tier 4B, ISO 20022 on Telegram. Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston, New York, Phoenix, Philadelphia, Seattle. Several major urban regions are reporting extensive rolling blackouts today. Blackout window now in effect 48 hours, according to sources close to the White Hat Alliance. This is Phase 1 of the much-anticipated global currency reset and Jassar Nassar wealth redistribution procedure. Critical systems are coming into alignment for the last time, with power outages estimated to last up to 48 hours in affected areas.
Global currency reset. Judy note. It was my personal opinion based on the below that we could anticipate Tier 4 BS. The Internet Group being notified to set exchange appointments sometime between Monday 22, June 22nd, and Sunday the 28th of June. On Monday the 2nd of March, President Trump signed Executive Order 14,178, banning CBDC development and ordering a digital asset strategic reserve. Since Monday, the 1st of June, redemption centers in 14 cities have been staffed and operational. Military personnel were present at each location. An NDA would be required. On Tuesday, the 9th of June 2026, the new gold, asset-backed quantum financial system went full global through the Starlink satellite system. On Wednesday, the 10th of June 2026, the old Cabal SWIFT system processed its last transaction. On Thursday, the 11th of June 2026, at 4:47 a.m. EST, the old banking SWIFT system died when JP Morgan executed its first live transaction through the XRP ledger. On Tuesday, the 16th of June 2026, Congress passed a bill that prohibited the cabal from producing the fiat digital dollar because the new gold asset-backed currency was already in place across 209 nations. On Saturday, the 20th of June 2026, bondholders in Tier 3 were expecting to be notified, exchange, and have access to their monies. Between Monday, the 22nd of June and Sunday, the 28th of June, Tier 4 BUS, the Internet Group notifications will be sent out. The first wave covered 1.2 million verified accounts. On Saturday, the 4th of July 2026, President Trump would announce the new gold standard currency. Wednesday, the 17th of June 2026, Mark Z., a bondholder, was receiving his money on Thursday, the 18th of June. Other bondholders were expecting to have their money this weekend. All of Tier 3 were going to exchange this weekend. The U.S. Mint was putting out a $1 gold coin. The new gold standard will be announced by Trump on July 4th. At that time, gold was expected to be worth from $1,500 to $2,000 an ounce. Silver was expected to be worth from $1,200 to $1,500 an ounce. Thursday, the 18th of June 2026, Bruce, the Big Call, Universe, IB. Sources say Tier 4 BUS, the Internet Group, could be notified for exchange appointments Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 22, 23, the 24th of June, and start exchanges Wednesday, the 24th of June, 2026.
Guru Information and Intel, Friday, June 19th, Why They Hate Trump, 107 on Telegram, which was supposed to last 10 years. Trump prevented the Great Reset, which was supposed to enslave all of mankind. Trump prevented the destruction of America, which was supposed to happen under Hillary Clinton. Trump arrested Jeffrey Epstein, influential leaders. Trump ended mass censorship and restored free speech. Trump arrested multiple heads of global drug cartels and ended the world's greatest drug operations. Trump removed the USA from the WHO, effectively preventing their plan for world domination. Trump will abolish the United Nations, again ending the agenda for a one world government. Trump exposed the mind control of the news media and popularized the term fake news media. Trump empowered the rise of alternative news media that counters the lies of the mainstream. Trump exposed election fraud and is busy making elections around the world safe again. Trump exposed the deep state for the whole world and is busy eradicating it. Trump launched a worldwide war against child trafficking and human rights abuse. Trump brought faith, prayer, and the Bible back in public buildings and society. Trump ended the worldwide funding of the deep state evil activities through USAID. Trump ended massive theft of trillions of American tax dollars. Trump is going to end taxes and will restore wealth to the American people. Trump ended the satanic rule in Hollywood and appointed Gibson and Stallone as his eyes in Hollywood. Trump empowered millions of patriots worldwide to oppose the deep state and New World Order. Trump openly confronts the globalists at the WEF and puts an end to their nefarious agendas. Trump ended the climate change scam, which was supposed to be the excuse for global tyranny. Friday, June 19, 2026. Who actually owns the Federal Reserve? 107 on Telegram. The Federal Reserve is not federal and has no reserve. The Fed is a private company owned by 8 satanic families who print money out of thin air with no accountability and give it to the masses as a viable source of income. The top 3 families who run the Fed are Rothschild, Morgan, Warburg. These 3 banking dynasties have created, controlled, weaponized, and financed every major war of the 19th and 20th century, including both world wars. They have eroded the U.S. dollar by up to 99% and crushed the hard-working American taxpayer with debt that they can never pay back. The Luciferian Illuminati created our debt-based financial institutions, such as the Bank of England, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and the Bank of International Settlements of Switzerland. Western international banking and monetary systems originated from the Knights Templar Cabal faction during the Crusades. Since then, the core purpose behind these institutions is so the Cabal get ultimate authority over who lives, whilst they live like gods in material luxury and abundance, and the rest of us suffer through poverty and endless misery. The Cabal's financial reign of terror is finally ending thanks to the heroic efforts of President Trump and the Earth Alliance's military operations across the globe to root out this hidden evil. Since at least 2019, the Fed has been closed indefinitely and has not printed a single bank note since. Friday, June 19th, saving Israel for last. Now the pattern is fully visible. Trump declassed revelation on Telegram. Trump kept Netanyahu close because the relationship was tactical. Keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. Remember the art of war? Stabilize the region around him, dismantle the proxy networks, lock Iran into containment, reposition Syria, isolate Hezbollah, then expose the leader, still choosing destruction. That defines the final takedown template. Globalist leaders are not removed in isolation. Their protection systems are dismantled first. Their wars are ended. Their funding networks are traced. Their proxies are neutralized. Their narratives collapse. Their allies step away. Their crimes surface. Then the receipts move upward through the architecture that protected them. Trump's message was direct. Too many civilians are being killed. Apartment buildings cannot be flattened every time Israel claims to be hunting one target. Syria can handle Hezbollah without Netanyahu expanding another endless war. The justification is disappearing. Iran contained, Syria repositioned, Hezbollah isolated, regional peace architecture forming, Netanyahu separated from the shield that covered him. War crimes, crimes against humanity, civilian deaths, destroyed cities, decades of protected power, now moving into full view. This is bigger than Israel. The final takedown template is moving through the global control structure, one protected leader at a time, one network at a time, one layer closer to the top. Watch it spread. Saving Israel for last meant removing every excuse first, nowhere left to hide, and this is only the beginning. Boom. Yeah, we are definitely in the phase of saving Israel for last, because you can see the narrative changing between Trump and Netanyahu. Trump is starting to criticize Netanyahu and J.D. Vance as well.
Sometimes criticism of Israel bleeds into Jew hate. It just does. Charlie was very aware of this. By the way, Charlie was very worried about Israeli influence in American politics. He also really disliked anti-Semitism. But in the same way that sometimes criticism of the Israeli government can be expressed in a way that's anti-Semitic, it's just not the case that every criticism of Bibi Netanyahu's policy decisions leads to anti-Semitism or look.
He is spot on correct. He is saying what we've all been saying, but get shut down when we say it by the pro-Israel lobby. That not everything that people are saying when you criticize the Israeli government, when you criticize Bibi Netanyahu, that's not anti-Semitic. And J.D. Vance is calling it out like it is. I love this one. And man, he went to town in this interview. Some good clips here.
I'm probably particularly sensitive to the first thing because of the last 2 days I've been defending the president's decision to end the Iran deal. And I find often the arguments are, well, Israel doesn't think this is good, therefore it's bad. And my reaction is Israel's opinions matter, but fundamentally they are separate.
Wow, that's huge. Now, he points out two important parts there. Is that in the White House, in the Situation Room, when they're talking about the Iran deal, they will say one part, and somebody in the White House will say, well, that's not good for Israel. Remember, yes, did I even post it? I was posting something the other day of who's compromised and who's not. But anyway, understand there's Israeli hardliners in the White House. It's not Trump, not J.D. Vance, obviously. But J.D. Vance would come back and say, well, if Israel doesn't think it's good, therefore it's bad. My reaction is Israel's opinions matter, but fundamentally they are separate. That's right. What does America first mean? America first means America first, not Israel first, not Israel's interest or feelings first. America's interest first. I love this comment because we already know what's happening right now with, maybe this is J.D. Vance going out there and signaling something, but listen to this.
On the one hand, people will say that America's interests are always aligned with Israel's interests. It's just not true. And I see this every day in the conversations that we have and the back and forth. And obviously, the president has been very clear. He's got some disagreements with Bibi Netanyahu about how precisely to bring the Iran war to a close. And then I think there are some people who will say that Israel's interests are never aligned with America's, and I think that's also not true. I think the reality is they're a good partner in the same way that the United Kingdom or France are good partners. That doesn't mean that we're always going to have aligned interests.
Whoa. Have you heard what's been being said about NATO as of recent by Hegseth? Basically, we don't need you. Have you seen Donald Trump's economic actions towards the UK and France and the military actions? Basically, if you guys don't get your shit together, then we're leaving you in the dust and we don't care. What J.D. Vance just said right there is he compared our relationship as the United States of America to Israel as comparable to the UK and France. That's huge. Here's another one. This is a good one. This is a good one. I mean, he's laying it all out, telling you the truth.
Another disagreement that we have on the right that's especially erupted after Charlie was assassinated is about Israel's role in American politics and the argument over whether or not they have an outsized influence here in the U.S. And so what is your take on that? Do you believe that Israel has an outsized influence in the U.S.?
Well, I think that Israel, like a lot of other countries, tries to influence American politics. I sort of take that as a given. And what I think is that American leaders have to be very careful that when we pursue something, we're doing it for America's best interest and not for any other country's best interest.
Confirmation. He's telling it how it is. Now, J.D. Vance is going very hard on Israel. Why? If there's peace in the Middle East, what security guarantees do you need to bring to Israel anymore? The security guarantees that we bring to Israel are one of the reasons why they invaded southern Lebanon. Do people see that logic? The security guarantees that the United States of America brings to Israel is the reason why, when this war started in Iran, Israel invaded southern Lebanon. It's because they had security guarantees. They had billions of dollars, $3 billion coming in, plus weapons and replacements. The only reason they went into southern Lebanon and began attacking Hezbollah is because they had security guarantees. You pull the security guarantees off the table, are they still going to be that aggressive nature? Are they still going to reach out and bomb somebody? Yesterday, one of the cabinet members in Bibi Netanyahu's cabinet said, he goes, look, the only reason that we are pro-America and all about America is because America pays us. We're glad that he goes, we're glad to pay it on our own or to buy Chinese fighter jets. He fucking said that. In other words, the $3 billion a year is not America buying Israel. It's the United States buying Israel's loyalty. That's not America first. And this is what J.D. Vance is trying to push out there and say. Now it goes to the idea of Iran. Listen specifically to what J.D. Vance says.
Nuclear program is gone, and we would see it if they tried to rebuild, and their economy is in shambles. That is true regardless of whether this deal is signed or not. Okay? So now you get to the deal, and you say, given that the Iranians are in a tough spot, and given that many people within the regime are saying, well, maybe we'd like to change our relationship with the United States compared to what it's been for 47 years. And you do still have terrorist elements within the regime, but you also have pragmatic elements within the regime who are actually affirmatively trying to have a better relationship with the United States. The nuclear program is gone.
Wait, what did he just say?
But you also have pragmatic elements within the regime who are actually affirmatively trying to have a better relationship with the United States.
Isn't that what we've been talking about the last few months? The civilian component government. Trump hand-selected them. Trump would only negotiate with them. The IRGC hardliners are trying to undermine them at every single cost. The reason they're still alive is because Trump was talking with them. J.D. Vance is saying they're not radicalized. They're actually very, very rational, and they're trying to communicate with us, and they want the best for their country.
Friday, June 19th. My fellow digital soldiers, for those unaware, we are witnessing the greatest military operation ever conducted in history to free our world from a multi-generational Luciferian mystery school cult that traces its roots back to the old Roman Empire, and even before. Mel Gibson on Telegram. U.S. military generals asked Trump to run for president in 2015 with assurances that the election would not be rigged. Thankfully, Trump won and peace is returning to we the people worldwide. President Trump and the Earth Alliance have successfully removed, often after negotiations of surrender, the cabal from various influential positions of power throughout the world. Saudi Arabia submitted, Israel submitted, the Vatican submitted, the EU submitted, NATO submitted, Japan submitted, North Korea submitted, China submitted, Vietnam submitted, India, Brazil, Russia, Argentina, Canada, Germany, Queen Elizabeth, and King Charles submitted. The Luciferian Illuminati cult has submitted. Peace is assured for we the people. This is Trump's worldwide peace plan. Where we go one, we go all. Friday, June 19, 2026, the FBI took down these 5 men before they could attack the UFC Freedom 250 on the White House lawn. Tyson Proper, 19, Ohio. Brian Omar Roa, 24, California. Michael Allen Thomas, 32, California. Daniel Eskridge, 32, Missouri. Abraham Hermosillo Alvarez, 31, from Nebraska. They allegedly planned to fly explosive-laden drones into buildings to create mass panic, then use snipers to gun down the fleeing crowd and high-value targets, anti-government radicals driven by conspiracy rage. The FBI and Secret Service stopped it, cold in a multi-state operation. The event went off without a hitch. This is what serious law enforcement looks like, thanks to the FBI for keeping America safe. Friday, June 19th, DHS confirms ringleader in White House UFC terror plot was an illegal immigrant from Mexico, possibly DACA under Obama. Carolyn Bessette Kennedy on Telegram. The suspect leading the plot to attack the UFC Freedom 250 event with explosive drones and snipers was in our country illegally. Up to 20 people involved total. This is exactly what happens when you have open borders and catch and release policies for years. Radicalized illegals plotting mass casualties on American soil, targeting Trump supporters and officials. UFC President Dana White was briefed in real time. These are the kind of events that bring the nuts out. Thank God the FBI stopped the nightmare before it unfolded. But this is a massive wake-up call. Secure the border, deport the threats. No more American lives put at risk by failed immigration policies. Trump was right all along.
The weapon they tried to destroy just won the war. The 10 Days of Darkness on Telegram. While the media spent 2 years trying to shut down Elon Musk's data center in Memphis, lawsuits, pollution claims, congressional hearings, the Pentagon was quietly using what that facility built to end the Iran war in 96 hours. This is not speculation. This is a sworn statement from the Pentagon's chief AI officer, filed in federal court on June 16, 2026. His words: Grok enabled U.S. forces to deploy over 2,000 munitions to 2,000 distinct targets within 96 hours during Operation Epic Fury. Read that number again. 2,000 precision strikes, 96 hours. 0 American casualties. What took Desert Storm 42 days and 100,000 troops, Grok did in 4 days with a keyboard. I was briefed on June 5th, 12 days before the Pentagon admitted it publicly. What I was told goes beyond what they released. The AI didn't just assist targeting. It ran 847,000 intelligence data points through predictive modeling in under 11 minutes. It identified 3 retaliatory launch sites that human analysts had missed, sites that would have fired within 4 hours of the first American strike. Those 3 sites alone would have killed an estimated 12,000 people. The AI saw what no human could see, and it acted before the enemy could react. Now you understand why they tried to destroy the Memphis facility, why the NACP was weaponized, why Anthropic was the Pentagon's preferred AI, until Trump banned it from every federal agency on June 14th. They didn't want Grok, because Grok cannot be controlled by the old guard. It answers to one infrastructure. One man built it. Trump signed the AI National Security Directive on June 11th. 6 days later, the war was over. That is not a coincidence. That is a sequence. Grok, Starshield, Colossus II, Golden Dome. These are not separate programs. They are one system, built by one man, protected by one president, deployed against the enemies of humanity. The military-industrial complex spent 50 years selling you $400 billion wars that lasted decades. One AI just made their entire business model obsolete in 96 hours. They are not attacking Musk because he is dangerous. They are attacking him because he made them irrelevant.
Friday, June 19th, America for the Bankers, MAGA Intel Hub on Telegram. Count Cherep Spiridovich, a Tsarist general who battled the Bolsheviks in the Russian Revolution, published a book in 1926 entitled The Secret World Government, which shows how the Rothschilds' plan for world tyranny dominates modern history. He cites an interview with German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck, 1876, in which Bismarck explained that the Rothschilds, who already controlled Europe, were afraid in the middle of the 19th century that the United States would become independent of them if it remained one nation. The plan, therefore, was to divide the United States between England, controlled by Lionel Rothschild, and France, controlled by James Rothschild. France was to take over the South, while British Canada annexed the defeated North. As a preparatory move in 1863, France and Spain invaded Mexico with 30,000 troops. Britain, France, and other European powers were ready to snuff out the young republic, but were deterred by Russia, the only European nation not in the Rothschilds' thrall. Tsar Alexander II sent his fleets to New York and San Francisco, declared that an attack on the United States was an attack on Russia. Meanwhile, the U.S. Congress, stimulated by Lincoln, created greenback dollars to finance the war and escape indebtedness to the foreign financiers. They, the Rothschilds, understood at once that the United States would escape their grip. Nothing was easier than to find a fanatic to strike. Cherep Spiridovich concludes, according to Bismarck, the awful civil war in America was fomented by a Jewish conspiracy and Abraham Lincoln was killed by the same hidden hand, 10 kings and scores of ministers only to more easily bleed their nations.
Restored Republic via GCR update. Judy note, the deep state global elite in Congress appeared to be out of control. For the most part they don't seem to be working for the people, but only to shape legislation so U.S. taxpayer monies would be laundered back into their own pockets. Every single year, $1 trillion in U.S. taxpayer money is lost to fraud. That's not a typo. That's $115 million every hour, $1.9 million every minute, $32,000 every second. And where does it go? Terrorism, child trafficking, luxury homes, designer bags, drugs, yachts, NGO front groups. Not to the American people. Not to roads. Not to vets. It funds the enemy. And it robs the working class blind. 2 years ago Fed Chairman Powell was implicated in running a gold products scam named after President Trump, who had nothing to do with it. May 23, 2024, Fed Chair Powell heading Trump gold products scam, so what is Trump doing about it? A lot. Maximum alert. Be prepared with food, cash and essentials. The EBS emergency broadcast system is about to begin its final phase, which includes 10 days of darkness, mass arrests, and nationwide operations, bank and ATM closures. A whopping 50,000 military troops have been mobilized to ensure arrests and lockdowns during the EBS, Quantum connected on Telegram. Sometime after Saturday, July 4, 2026, free Q phones will be given out to all people on Earth by the Global Military Alliance when they set up their money accounts, wallets, at redemption centers. Only you can access your monies through your Q phone. The free, completely secure and unhackable service will be used around the globe for banking, internet, texting, calling, voting and much more. A update. Janine Larrick, Caitlin Hunter, urgent plea to the White Hats, please free Janine Larrick, who remains in extreme danger. Janine has been illegally held at the Guernsey County, Ohio Sheriff Jail since June 1, 2026 without going before a judge, without legal representation, without a court hearing, without bond set and with falsified papers filed in court against her. What we thought we knew, but didn't really know and now are supposed to know but don't have a clue. With clones, doubles, made-up movies Hollywood style and Trump's military alliance throwing more popcorn at us, it gets so confusing. Thursday, June 18, 2026, White House releases footage of President Trump formally signing the Iran Peace Memorandum of Understanding in Versailles, France. As he departs for America, President Trump's team and Iran have just signed the Memorandum of Understanding to formally end the war, resume Strait of Hormuz traffic, ensure no nuclear Iran and more. Axios, Washington Post and We the People on Telegram. Thursday, June 18, 2026, Edward Griffin, the Federal Reserve System does not need to be audited, it needs to be abolished because it is a cartel operating against the public interests, generates our most unfair tax, encourages war, destabilizes the economy and is an instrument of totalitarian control. Jazara/Nizara will be activated. The military will remove faction-controlled governments worldwide while simultaneously arresting 500,000 indicted individuals globally. 7 trumpets, also known as the EBS message, will arrive on your phone, instructing you to turn off your TV, radio, and phone. All military forces worldwide, including the United States, will block all media, internet, phones, and television programming. Emergency services will remain operational. During this time, the internet, ATMs, and phones will be down unless you're calling 911. This global martial law status will include a 10-day communications blackout, a global emergency broadcast system, and 3 8-hour documentaries on fraud, corruption, pedophilia, arrests, and tribunals worldwide. 1 day, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. The elite. After the 10-day communications blackout, we will connect to a new network. I love the internet. The old government, education, financial, healthcare, and commerce systems will be dismantled and replaced. Everything coming is absolutely wonderful, bam. Thursday, June 18, 2026, Project Odin equals EBS, Christian B. Wallace Tier 4B ISO 20022 on Telegram. We know that something powerful will take down the Mossad media satellite. This will cause a worldwide communications blackout, transitioning us to a quantum system. This is called Project Odin. In essence, It provides a reason to activate military EBS. Starlink is up and seemingly ready for the Army to activate the worldwide emergency broadcast system. The Odin project, as mentioned by Ron Code Monkeys, is a powerful cross-platform anti-cheat engine and part of Quantum Starlink. These new quantum systems are protected by secret space programs beyond the reach of the cabal. Q tells us that Mossad media assets will be eliminated. Has repeatedly stated that there will be a big biblical scenario where they present it as World War III, but in reality they will activate the military worldwide and then start bombing all this satanic place. This will release the Nizara/Jezara funds and then we the people will begin to rebuild. This event is truly biblical. Some of the larger satanic Illuminati sites in the world, Q showed us things like Vatican, Buckingham Palace, White House X2, USA, Germany, 3GD in China, CERN at Swiss/French border, possibly Big Pharma in Wuhan equals Israel/Khazarians control CCP communication, etc. 34 satanic buildings and dams will fall. Many events will also take place such as, rods of God/do, directed energy weapons, used on Satan-targeted sites worldwide, planes and trains will be grounded, lights/energy will be turned off briefly as they switch to Tesla-free energy. Bitcoin server/data center will be hacked and shut down forever. 99.5% of cryptocurrencies will disappear, including Chinese coins. ISO 20022 coins backed by precious metals will be available. World War III scare event will take place. Nuclear siren water events. The stock market collapsed. Global martial arts rules. Castle Rock. Background: Julian Assange. Quantum system. Odin project enabled Nizara/Jezara, RV revealing the election through the military court. FISA military trial. 10 countries will run EBS for worldwide coverage. Tremendous truths revealed. Trump and Kennedy inaugurations. Israeli Mossad has controlled world media out of America. Project Odin is part of Quantum Starlink. The new quantum system will be protected by secret space programs beyond the reach of the cabal. Satanic media assets will be removed. Israeli intelligence was forced to withdraw. Media assets will be removed after communications are disabled. John F. Kennedy Jr. will appear. To convert to Jezara/greatness, they must play this fake World War III scenario to sound the sirens in each national military command center. This is to justify to the entire planet many things that have taken place. The Jezara military law was implemented, which included secret military tribunals, confessions, executions, etc. As usual, all armies will be there to help build new things. We have achieved freedom, saved our children and freed the world of corrupt governments and enslavers. Thursday, June 16, 2026. Worldwide blackout coming. Trump gives the go-ahead for a huge global military operation with EBS activation, thousands of elites set to be arrested, quantum connected on Telegram. President Donald J. Trump has given the final go-ahead for a historic global military operation as the world stands on the edge of the greatest awakening ever. This will turn on the emergency broadcast system and take down the whole deep state cabal. People who know say that the plan to arrest thousands of powerful people who are involved in child trafficking and corruption started on April 1, 2026. In the next 48 hours, there will be a huge blackout around the world. There will be controlled lockdowns for 10 to 12 days. During certain 5-hour windows each day, citizens are told to stay inside while special forces make arrests. This is the storm that QAnons have been waiting for, the time when justice finally comes. Trump's loyal soldiers have been getting ready for years by mapping out underground tunnels and drug trafficking routes. The deep state is in a panic because their empire is falling apart. When the EBS turns on, it will take over all mainstream media. Every screen will be full of the truth about election fraud, crimes by Big Pharma, and elite pedophile rings. Starlink will make sure that the broadcasts reach every part of the world. Special forces will hit their targets with accuracy, taking out corrupt billionaires and officials who are hiding in bunkers. Only Trump is in charge of the global military alliance. Stockpiles are ready so that patriots won't have to go through any pain during this change. This operation will bring back real sovereignty. Under Nizara/Jezara, debts will be erased, borders will be protected, and the corrupt government will be destroyed. It's over for the Rothschild, Clintons, Gates, and their friends. It's the golden age. Stay on the line, patriots. We are winning the light in the battle. A new republic is born. Global currency reset. K. Judy note, it was my personal opinion based on the below that we could anticipate Tier 4B, us, the Internet Group, being notified to set exchange appointments sometime between Monday 22 June 22 and Sunday 28 June. On Monday 2nd of March, President Trump signed Executive Order 14,178, banning CBDC development and ordering a digital asset strategic reserve. Since Monday 1st of June, redemption centers in 14 cities have been staffed and operational. Military personnel were present at each location. NDAs would be required. On Tuesday, June 9, 2026, the new gold/asset-backed quantum financial system went full global through the Starlink satellite system. On Wednesday, June 10, 2026, the old Cabal SWIFT system processed its last transaction. On Thursday, June 11, 2026 at 4:47 a.m. EST, the old banking SWIFT system died when JP Morgan executed its first live transaction through the XRP ledger. On Tuesday, June 16, 2026, Congress passed a bill that prohibited the cabal from producing the fiat digital dollar, because the new gold/asset-backed currency was already in place across 209 nations. On Saturday, June 20, 2026, bondholders in Tier 3 were expecting to be notified, exchange and have access to their monies. Between Monday 22nd of June and Sunday 28th of June, Tier 4B, US, the Internet Group, notifications will be sent out. The first wave covered 1.2 million verified accounts. On Saturday, July 4, 2026, President Trump would announce the new gold standard currency. Wednesday, June 17, 2026 marks, a bondholder was receiving his money on Thursday, 18th of June. Other bondholders were expecting to have their money this weekend. All of Tier 3 were going to exchange this weekend. The U.S. Mint was putting out a $1 gold coin. The new gold standard will be announced by Trump on July 4. At that time, gold was expected to be worth from $1,500 to $2,000 an ounce. Silver was expected to be worth from $1,200 to $1,500 an ounce. Thursday, June 18, 2026 Bruce, the big call sources say Tier 4B, US, the Internet Group, could be notified for exchange appointments Moan, Tuesday, Wed 22, 23, 24th of June and start exchanges Wednesday, June 24, 2026. 1.2 million ZIM holders will get the first appointments. Trump signed a NEO abolishing the IRS. Cryptocurrency was live on the new financial system yesterday, Wednesday, June 17, 2026. Tariff dividends will be paid to U.S. citizens. The Clarity Act would be announced on Saturday, July 4, 2026. The announcement of a consumption tax of 12 to 14% cost of new goods that will replace income tax, state tax, real estate taxes, etc. was expected to be announced on Saturday, July 4, 2026. Israel will be last. Thursday, June 18, 2026. Benjamin Netanyahu says he will not comply with President Trump's peace deal with Iran and will strike Iran and Lebanon whenever he deems necessary. Netanyahu says he does not see eye to eye with Trump on the issue and that he is responsible for Israel's security. Netanyahu needs to be removed. Thursday, June 18, 2026. When mandated vaccines didn't happen and global warming lost interest of the public, the global elites at the World Economic Forum turned their interests to our tap water. They plan to add vaccines and other untested ingredients to public water supplies. They promise you will own nothing and be happy when these evil Satan worshippers can control the world. Thursday, June 18, 2026, explosive report, the Obama trap, why the SCOTUS immunity ruling in the Michael Flynn parallel could put Obama in the grand jury hot seat. Thursday, June 18, 2026, breaking special report, Carney calls it a rupture. Trump just cracked Iran after 47 years. Thursday, June 18, 2026, bombshell alert, Mike Pence criminally implicated in classified leaking scandal. Thursday, June 18, 2026, breaking, Moscow under fire, massive drone assault ignites fires, shakes key infrastructure, and sends air defenses into action. Thursday, June 18, 2026, WEF plans to poison your water with vaccine. The global elites at the World Economic Forum have turned their evil eyes to your tap water. Thursday, June 18, 2026, FBI raids Soros-backed Ohio voter group HQ and major fraud probe, Pastor Bob Joyce, Elvis, on Telegram. Agents hit the Ohio Organizing Collaborative, OOC, a nonprofit that registered over 100,000 voters and pushes hard left ballot fights, seizing devices and questioning staff statewide. Past canvasser already convicted of fraud in 2017. Millions in Soros cash is behind it, fueling fraud. The DOJ/FBI investigation centers on potential fraud violations tied to OX voter registration and mobilization activities. A DOJ official stated that search warrants were judge-approved. The 2017 guilty plea consisted of a paid canvasser working with OAK pleaded guilty to running a fraudulent voter registration operation. Soros has strong funding ties to the OAK, receiving significant backing from George Soros, over $1.9 million from the Foundation to Promote Open Society, 2019 to 2020. $1 million plus from the Open Society Action Fund, including 2021 and 2023 grants, additional funding via New Venture Fund and Tides Foundation, support from unions including American Federation of Teachers and Service Employees International Union. OAK reported over $10 million in revenue in 2024. OAK spent $250,000 in 2023 to oppose a GOP-backed effort on abortion rights and $300,000 in 2024 against Republican redistricting initiatives. It works closely with the Democratic Party on voter efforts. Board member Prentice Haney called the timing of the raid an attempt to intimidate civil rights leaders and voters during a contested election season, because they know their fraud operations have been exposed. The raid is a significant development in voter fraud operations, targeting a heavily Soros-funded progressive voter group. The investigation remains ongoing with limited public details released so far. This is a huge step in the right direction with a lot more to follow. The election fraud days are coming to an end. Thursday, June 18, 2026. Edward Griffin on the Federal Reserve. When I did my research on this topic, I came to the conclusion that the Federal Reserve System does not need to be audited, it needs to be abolished. The reason I say that is because if they audit the Federal Reserve System, they would find out that it is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's all out in the open. It's one of the greatest scams of all history. Out on the surface. It must be abolished for 7 reasons. Black small square emoji, it is incapable of accomplishing its stated objectives. Black small square emoji, it is a cartel operating against the public interests. Black small square emoji, it is the supreme instrument of usury. Black small square emoji, it generates our most unfair tax. Black small square emoji, it encourages war. Black small square emoji, it destabilizes the economy. Black small square emoji, it is an instrument of totalitarian control. Thursday, June 18, 2026. On June 10, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth flew to Guantanamo Bay. The media told you it was about rising tensions with Cuba. He did bench presses with the troops. He ran with soldiers at dawn. He smiled for cameras. That was the cover, SG and on Telegram. What he actually did, at 9:47 p.m. that night, after the cameras left, was inspect 3 newly completed detention wings that do not appear in any public construction record. Capacity, 240 individuals. Climate-controlled. Soundproofed. Built between January and May 2026 under a classified infrastructure order signed by Trump on December 19, 2025. These wings are not for foreign combatants. 5 days later, on June 15, Gavin Newsom went on camera and told the world that Trump's DOJ is investigating him and his wife. He looked terrified. He called it politically motivated. He begged the public for sympathy. He already knows what is coming. I am going to tell you what I was told on June 11, one day after Hegseth's visit. There are currently 412 sealed federal indictments filed across 7 jurisdictions since February 2026. Not all are political. But 83 of them are. Names you have seen on television for decades. Names that told you Trump was the threat while they were the criminals. Newsom is not the target. Newsom is the door. His investigation leads to a financial network that connects Sacramento to 3 foreign governments. His wife's foundation received $14.2 million from entities that no longer exist on paper. Kash Patel jumped the gun this week by announcing the UFC plot arrests before the Secret Service was ready. Why? Because he is tired of waiting. The man has a list. And the list is longer than anyone in Washington wants to admit. Trump is in France right now. At the G7. Smiling. Shaking hands. While his Justice Department is dismantling them at home. This is not political retribution. This is the constitutional process they told you would never come. Grand juries. Evidence. Sealed filings. Judges who cannot be pressured because they were appointed for life. The first satisfactions will be made public before August 1, 2026. Not all 83. But enough to make the rest panic. Enough to trigger resignations. Enough to prove that no one is above the law, not even the people who spent 8 years telling you that phrase only applied to Trump. Hegseth inspected the rooms. Patel has the names. The grand juries have the evidence. And the man in France has the patience to let it all unfold legally. Gitmo Wings 240 sealed 412-7 jurisdictions on seal phase 10801. The storm was never a metaphor.
Hello, Patriots. I'm at Restored Republic via a GCR update compiled by Judy Byington. The Obama family is a manufactured farce that was used by cabal-controlled CIA to destroy our nation from within, said John F. Kennedy on Telegram. Are Barack Obama's children even his? No, they're not actually. Or did he rent them from his campaign chairman? Chairman of the Obama Foundation, Martin Nesbitt, sure looks like Malia and Natasha Obama. He sits on the boards of directors of publicly traded companies like CenterPoint Energy, Norfolk Southern Railroad Corporation, and American Airlines Group. He was on the board of the Chicago Housing Authority, which I believe Big Mike was part of. Martin Nesbitt, close personal friend of Obama, and was also the campaign treasurer during Obama's 2008 presidential campaign. Imagine if a foreign Muslim asset infiltrated our highest level of government as president with his fake birth certificate and fake transgender wife, created a fake family to destroy our nation from within. Then Obama went after President Trump, and it was all done directly by the CIA and their media assets they own. A big mistake they're all about to realize. Judy note. Below is an article I wrote 3 years ago that points out the Obama, Biden, Clinton, Pelosi criminality that has yet to hit the national news, let alone be recognized by the general public. One would ask why was there little or no interest in the workings of the deep state globalists, since the purpose of the Obama administration appeared to be changing America from a democratic regime to socialist and communism. If it weren't for Trump, they would have made it. I purposefully left in the Article 14 references, even though most of which have since been erased from the internet, to show the censorship we still face today. Saturday, April 22nd, 2023, and then the link is Obama, Biden behind arming ISIS Benghazi, SEAL Team 6 massacres. Judy note. Speaking of censorship, for years I have almost daily posted articles and updates on the internet's largest news organization before its news. That is until last Monday. This has yet to correct the problem, and I haven't been able to post all week. This is the third time this has happened. You'd think I was publishing something the deep state didn't want you to know. EBS alert. Very soon, everyone worldwide will receive 7 emergency broadcast system text messages on their cell phones urging us to go home and stay for 10 days, though the EBS could last 3 to 6 weeks. Be prepared. During those 10 days, banks will close. The internet and ATMs will not work, and phones will only work for 911 calls. You can obtain a signal app from the military which will work your phone. On TVs and radios worldwide, the EBS will play 8-hour documentaries 3 times a day for 10 days. 10 days of communication darkness. After the 10 days of communication darkness, all phones, TVs, radios, and computers worldwide run on the secure Starlink satellite system. All peoples of the world will be called into redemption centers where we will receive Nisar payments, can exchange and redeem our currency in Zim, and set up secure bank accounts identified by our own body rhythms through the new quantum system. Banks will no longer have access to our monies. Possible timing. On Monday, March 2nd, President Trump signed Executive Order 14178, banning CBDC development and ordering a digital asset strategic reserve. Since Monday, June 1st, redemption centers in 14 cities have been staffed and operational. Military personnel were present at each location. NDAs would be required. On Tuesday, June 9th, the new gold asset-backed quantum financial system went full global through the Starlink satellite system. On Wednesday, June 10th, the old Cabal SWIFT system processed its last transaction. On Thursday, June 11th, 2026, at 4:47 a.m., the old banking SWIFT system died. when JP Morgan executed its first live transaction through the XRP ledger. On Tuesday, June 16th, Congress passed a bill that prohibited the cabal from producing the fiat digital dollar because the new gold asset-backed currency was already in place across 209 nations. On Saturday, June 20th, 2026, bondholders in Tier 3 were expecting to be notified, exchange, and have access to their monies. Between Monday, June 22nd and Sunday, June 28th, Tier 4B notifications will be sent out. The first wave covered 1.2 million verified accounts. Saturday, July 4th, President Trump would announce the new gold standard currency. And remember, this is an event-driven war, so the dates are fluid. EBS blackout martial law lockdowns. Wednesday, June 17th, EBS activation. Quantum connected on Telegram. No timeframes have been given for EBS activation. There have been many suspicions on time limits. Absolutely nothing has been set in stone about any of it. Absolutely no one knows, and it is designed that way for a reason. It will happen when it is time. When it happens, follow the EBS instructions to the letter. All we have been told by the operator who is dialed in: number 1, everyone will be home, and 2, it will happen at the top of the hour. The general consensus in decoder groups is to be ready for 3 to 6 weeks. Everything has already been factored in. You will be fine. Do not panic. Worldwide, we will receive 7 trumpets, aka EBS text messages on our phones, alerting us on what is happening and urging us to tune into our TVs and radios. We will be urged to go and stay at home for at least 10 days, though the EBS could last 3 to 6 weeks. Worldwide, on TVs and radios, the EBS will play 8-hour documentaries 3 times a day for 10 days, called 10 Days of Communication Darkness. Worldwide, the internet and ATMs will not work during the 10 days. Worldwide, phones will work for 911 calls, 911 calls, but we can obtain a signal app from the military which will secure the phones for regular use through this new Starlink satellite system and quantum computer. The documentaries will cover topics of arrests, tribunals, fraud, corruption, pedophilia. After the 10 days of communication darkness, all phones, TVs, radio, and computers worldwide will be connected to the new quantum internet, run on the secure Starlink satellite system. All peoples of the world will be called into redemption centers where we will receive Nazar payments, can exchange and redeem our currency and Zim, and set up secure bank accounts identified by our own body rhythms. Through the new quantum system, banks will no longer have access to our monies. Global currency reset. Judy note: from the below sources, it appeared we could anticipate Tier 4B, us, the internet group, being notified to set exchange appointments sometime between Monday, June 22nd and Sunday, June 28th. Wednesday, June 17th, Mark Z, a bondholder, was receiving his money on Thursday, June 18th. Other bondholders were expecting to have their money this weekend. All of Tier 3 were going to exchange this weekend. The U.S. Mint was putting out a $1 gold coin. The new gold standard will be announced by Trump on July 4th. At that time, gold was expected to be worth from $1,500 to $2,000 an ounce. Silver was expected to be worth from $1,200 to $1,500 an ounce. I would think gold would be a lot more than that, because right now, isn't it around $3,500 an ounce, or somewhere around there, $4,000, $3,500? But I guess we'll see. Silver that's a huge jump for silver. So that's good if you're collecting silver. Wednesday, June 17th, update. On June 11th, 2026 at 4:47 a.m., the old banking system died when JP Morgan executed its first live transaction through the XRP ledger, connected to Ondo Finance, connected to MasterCard, routed through ISO 20022 protocol. No press conference, no announcement. SWIFT processed its last independent transaction on June 10th. Since June 11th, every single cross-border settlement between the 47 participating institutions has been routed through the new ledger, not tested live, processing $4.2 billion per hour as you read this. Congress passed the CBDC prohibition clause on June 16th, buried inside a housing bill. No standard loan vote, no debate. They banned the government digital dollar permanently through 2030 because the people's system is already operational, and they cannot compete with it. They did not ban CBDC because they don't want digital currency. They banned it because the replacement already exists and it's decentralized. Tier 4B notifications begin between June 22nd and June 28th. The first wave covers 1.2 million verified accounts. Since June 1st, redemption centers in 14 cities have been staffed and operational. Military personnel are present at each location. NDAs will be required. The exchange rates you've been told are not public yet, but the structure is locked, gold-backed, ASIP verified, quantum encrypted through Starshield satellite coverage that went full global on June 9th. The man who signed Executive Order 14178 on March 2nd, banning CBDC development and ordering a digital asset strategic reserve, did not do it for Wall Street. He did it for you, every patriot who held, every person who was called crazy, every family that believed when the world laughed. Israel will be last. Wednesday, June 17th, President Trump just dunked on Israel for committing war crimes against civilians. So the tide is turning now. He's beginning to turn against Israel. I knew this was coming eventually. So that's a good thing. We're getting closer. Israel has been fighting Hezbollah too long and too many people are being killed, and you don't have to knock down an apartment house every time you're looking for somebody, because there are a lot of people in those apartment houses and they're not all Hezbollah. That can tell you. And I suggested to Israel to let Syria take care of Hezbollah, because to be honest with you, I think they do a better job of doing it. Mr. Poole on Telegram. And according to Charlie Ward, Hezbollah is paid for and sponsored by Israel, and that's their excuse to go in, and it's a land grab. A Lebanon land grab is what he said. And I'm not surprised. So I think there's a lot of secrets that are held about Israel we're going to find out that are not good. Wednesday, June 17th, breaking. Benjamin Netanyahu says he will not comply with President Trump's peace deal with Iran and will strike Iran and Lebanon whenever he deems necessary. Pompous ass. I'm sorry. Netanyahu says he does not see eye to eye with Trump on the issue and that he is responsible for Israel's security. Netanyahu needs to be removed. EBS Live on Telegram. He's a walking ego. Probably a clone. I don't think that's the original Netanyahu. AI mind control. Wednesday, June 17, 2026. French intelligence agency drops Palantir AI tech over U.S. dependency and spying fears. The Gateway Pundit by Paul Sarin.
We have Leo Zagami back with us again. He's always very informative. This one is a very good one. We're going to be talking about ETs in the Vatican. Wow, what a combination. And of course, Leo has the deepest insights that are very informative and are going to take us to another level. And you actually have a new book. Is that correct?
A new book, which is basically the Vatican's top secret alien agenda. And this is a book that is already been #1 in the UFO section of Amazon. So if you want to get your copy, you can do it. It's available on Amazon. And you can also, of course, go and check out, let's say, a synthesis of it on my website, leozagami.com, together with my latest articles based on this groundbreaking book, which is in collaboration with the Italian Centro Ufologico Nazionale, the Ufological National Center of Italy, which was born almost 60 years ago, and his co-founder Roberto Pinotti, who has been my mentor in this field and one of the most eminent ufologists in the world. So we have definitely a lot to discuss, especially because we are seeing one more dump after the other regarding these UAP files, as they call them today. And there is definitely groundbreaking revelations connecting this whole disclosure and the control of the narrative by the Vatican.
Yeah, very good. So here's a picture of the book exposing the Vatican's top secret alien agenda, the antidote to Spielberg's psyop. So you're going to give us a lot of insights here. So
Yeah, I was actually privy to information, don't ask me how, regarding the script of Steven Spielberg's movie. And so I created an antidote with this book. You can actually already read about the movie in this book in real time as you go and see it. Hidden Encounters, Forbidden Rituals, and Jesuit Astronomers in the Age of UFO Disclosure is the only book that talks about this topic of great importance, because you see, we have in the last 9 years since that famous TikTok video appeared, and then the article in the New York Times, suddenly we had these people popping out of nowhere like Luis Elizondo from the Pentagon or David Grush later on in 2023. But in reality, they are all Jesuit informers and disinfo agents. But in reality, I will call them gatekeepers, because it's not fair to call them disinfo agents. They are actually trying to control the narrative. So they try to do it in a way that is preparing for ultimate disclosure, but they will never give you the ultimate form of disclosure, because it's a problem that concerns, of course, as you can imagine, national security, because this whole thing is connected with what we call the legacy program. Now, the legacy program is a program of reverse engineering which links the CIA, the United States Air Force, and the defense contractors. And they don't really have an intention to fully disclose everything, but they are definitely creating a lot of theater around it. And there is now, I don't know if you saw the latest nomination of Avi Loeb, who is supposed to be in charge of this scientific committee, that finally, they say, oh, Avi Loeb is a guy who was always fighting the system about this. And it's like they are creating false narratives. Like, for example, Jeremy Corbell. Nobody knew who he was 10 years ago. Now he's the guy that with his new documentary film is portrayed like the martyr of ufology, risking his life to give us all the truths. So I'm trying here to demystify and create the reality here of this disclosure. You understand, Michael? Because when I published the previous book regarding this subject, which was Invisible Master, I then inserted my first take on certain things, but we were just at the beginning of it all. But I thought it was perfect at that moment to give a different look and a different prospect. And it actually went very well. But when I arrived here in the United States, and the first place where I ended was Contact in the Desert, I kind of it smelled of government spooks all over the place. And I wanted to really understand who was controlling these UFO conferences, who was behind it all. And in the end, I discovered it was, of course, the Vatican. And this year, like I write in my book, Daniel Sheehan, I don't know if you ever heard of him. He's like a famous UFO advocate, but also a very famous attorney, a little bit progressive liberal. He used to be a Jesuit. He was a former Jesuit novitiate who left the Jesuits, became for 10 years their legal advisor of the Jesuit headquarters, and at the same time became the instigator for a lot of the UFO movement that we have here in the United States today. He is the lawyer of Luis Elizondo, he is the lawyer of Stephen Greer. So you see, everything is controlled here. In my book, you can see how David Grush is actually a complete puppet who says, oh, yes, I follow Professor Pasulka the late Professor Tigman. Now, for normal people, they will not really understand what that means. But David Grush is a Catholic and is a Jesuit agent, just as another figure that you might have heard of that is actually one of the major gatekeepers of the whole game here. Al Puthoff of the Stargate project that used to be, of course, involved with the whole remote viewing thing, you know? So the DIA, the CIA, the whole show then provided us what we saw in The Man Who Stared at Goats, that famous film that it's one of the few films I can actually see with George Clooney that doesn't make me puke because he's usually such a lefty Scrooge in his movies. I can't stand it. But that movie is actually a very good movie that needs to be seen. So
I agree.
My intention with this book was this. There was a lot of material that was not accessible in the English-speaking world because it was only published in Italy and France. And these researchers were not American, and they never really... so I contacted Roberto Pinotti, and then thanks to him, I was able to also access the work of Alfredo Lissoni, who is a professor of religion who in the early 2000s was able to research the UFO, the UAP as they call it, phenomena now, the UAP, but I always call it UFO because in the end, let's call it UFO to be more, it's more simple.
I think they do that on purpose to confuse us.
It's a little bit, but I mean, there is some motivations for calling it UAP. I explain in this book. One of the main motivation is the plasmic non-human intelligence, the so-called orbs, various orbs that also communicate at times with the people who interact with them. That is not really an object, nuts and bolts. So for that reason, you can actually have one of these orbs inside your home. Now, you can't really have a UFO inside your living room, but you can have that in your living room. So that justifies, in a way, the name UAP. But aside from that, we still prefer the old one. So what happened was that the Vatican archives are 53 miles under the Vatican of archives, of secret archives, often regarding the cases of beatification or sanctification of saints. So when you are actually making a saint, you have to evaluate all the paranormal phenomena around it. And often it included also what we now call UAP. So the whole thing regarding the Vatican is that they have one of the biggest archives that contains the mysteries of it all. And I wanted to have access to it, but it was impossible for me. Thanks to this guy called Alfredo Lissoni, who is a professor of religion, he went inside there asserting he was studying Christian legends. So, if he said he was studying UFOs or UAP, they would have not let him in. But he was able to go in. Aside from the 53 miles of the secret Vatican archives, now known as the Vatican Apostolic Archive, there is also a Vatican library. And the Vatican library is another 23 miles of material. Now, the archives contain mostly all the various correspondence with heads of states for the last 1,000 years, the Vatican, every secret possible and imaginable, also, like we said, for the cause of beatification or sanctification of saints. But then you have also the books, the forbidden books, the books that at times us normal folk are never meant to read. And of course, the level of security that they have to accede to these archives, which I have put in the front. You see, this is actually an image from the Secret Vatican Archive.
Wow.
And imagine it's 53 miles of this stuff.
Good God.
So I was able to include a lot of research done in the archives, but at the same time, I was also able to expose those people that the Vatican is using for this disclosure project. Now, we know that the heads of the New World Order, as I always said, in my last two books, the Jesuits and the Sabbatean Frankists, okay? Now, the film of Steven Spielberg is exactly that. The script by Steven Spielberg, who is, of course, a well-known sympathizer of Chabad Lubavitch and the Sabbatean Frankists, and at the same time, the screenplay by a guy, David Coep, who is a Catholic Jesuit agent who has inserted in the movie a lot of these Jesuit references. Like, for example, one of the protagonists is a former nun, or there is a nun in a monastery that talks about extraterrestrials, and she actually cites a phrase given by a famous Catholic saint. So all this is very much constructed in a way that we embrace the extraterrestrials as our friends, regardless of their danger. This is very important because you see, the Vatican, like I explain in my book, started preparing for disclosure in the 1950s, actually in the 1930s.
Wow.
And I have documents to prove that, because you remember when David Grush came out in front of Congress in 2023, and he said then that there was, of course, reverse engineering, this and that. And then later on, he went on record with some newspapers and media, and he said the Pope Pius XII was involved in the retrieval of a UFO in northern Italy in 1933 that Mussolini had taken, and then thanks to him, the UFO ended up in the hands of the Americans after the war. In my book, I have the original documents from Mussolini.
Wow.
Ordering the journalist Absolute Science. And these documents were given to us by this guy who is no longer alive, who is the grandson of Mussolini, because he betrayed him, Galeazzo Ciano. So this guy, Fabrizio Ciano, at the end of the 90s, beginning of the 2000s, he started, before he died, of course, to send these documents out to some researchers that I know, Roberto Pinotti and Alfredo Lissoni, and then also another guy called Bongiovanni. He said he did it in a very mysterious way. He didn't want, and also to some newspaper, but he didn't want to, it wasn't only regarding the UFO crash in Magenta. It was also regarding a series of UFO events. And these are all official documents, forensically analyzed, so there is no debunking. The guy who analyzed it is this guy here in the center, who used to be one of Italy's most known forensic analysts. The guy who did the book, collaborated with me, he was in the military, working with NATO. He founded 60 years ago this Italian ufologic center. And so when he was working for the 3rd Battalion of Nuclear Missile, which of course at that point you have as you know, a very high up security clearance, the American officers of NATO that were involved with him went to him and said, we know that you like this subject. He was actually presenting it formally to the Italian, I think it was a armed forces event that he organized with the Italian armed forces. So these Americans went then and he said to Roberto, well, we have actually retrieved UFOs in America, and we have the bodies of aliens. This was actually in the early 70s this happened. So from there on, Roberto, of course, was already a firm believer and became even a bigger believer. But how did he become a believer? Okay, Roberto is born in 1944, the same year as my mother. In 1954, something very strange happened in Florence. During a soccer match, suddenly, a massive amount of UFOs appeared over the stadium. They had to interrupt the soccer match in the end because of all these UFOs over Florence. So imagine interrupting a soccer match in Italy is like interrupting a mass. I mean, Italians, for them, soccer is a religion. They were all watching in the sky and nobody was watching the match anymore. So then at that point, the referee had to interrupt the match. And then they picked up when all this UFO activity eventually will disappear. It was at that point, he was 10 years old, he understood, he's grown up a passion for it. But in 1954, the day after this happened in Florence, the American ambassador also witnessed these UFOs over Rome. And this American ambassador became also very relevant in this story because she was connected with President Eisenhower. And President Eisenhower will actually allegedly have a couple of close encounters of the third kind in the early 50s with both the Greys and the Nordics. But in 1954, the most interesting thing was that the Vatican, there was one of the ambassadors for the Vatican, a guy called Alberto Perego, who was there in St. Peter's Square. Suddenly, he sees a squadron of 40 UFOs over St. Peter's Square.
Wow.
At that point, that's when the Vatican exopolitical game started. That's when we finally have the birth of the exopolitical interest, which then becomes even more important and relevant a few years later, when a pope that had been initiated in a lodge and then had this contact experience, a guy called Roncalli, who would become Pope John the 23rd, in July 1961 had himself an encounter of the third kind in Castel Gandolfo. This is a pope, the pope who gave birth to the Second Vatican Council. And so before starting the council, he meets with an extraterrestrial. That changed the whole course of the council and what it was supposed to mean for the church. In fact, you remember how many times we have discussed the importance of the Second Vatican Council in the creation of the one world religion? Many times on your show, many times, because I've discussed in volume 12, I've discussed it in other books, in volume 7. It's always been a very important topic for me, the fact that the Vatican is gathering together all these faiths. But what is the reason? The reason is that once you have disclosure, automatically everybody goes to the religious leader, not to their politicians. And so the Vatican, wanted to prepare for that. Now you have the evangelicals who, as you know, there was an accident that happened just in May, at the end of May, in which a famous politician had allegedly said certain things. And that alleged politician said these things to a group of pastors that came together. Then one of these pastors went on the air during a podcast and said, well, I can't tell you who he was, but what he said was so scary, and we were all scared. Then, like a few days after, he had to basically do a whole disclaimer about it. Because, of course, the man in black had gone to him, and he was like forced into damage control. There is actually a video I have of this guy, and he looks, yes, it was not the words of this politician, it was my words. So let's understand who this politician was and what was said. The politician was Congressman Eric Burleson, who's been one of the most outspoken Republican members regarding the UAP disclosure. Just a few days ago, they were on the stairs of Congress. You remember, with David Grush also and many other, Paulina Luna, and it was a bipartisan effort. We saw David Grush at the podium of this task force on the declassification of federal secrets that on June 9, admitted, and there was also Burchett, course, that somebody's mentioning in the chat. These people didn't blink an eye when David Grush said, we have aliens, alive aliens.
Wow.
No, we're not talking about reverse engineering and spaceships, which was already something. We're talking about live biological material of a non-terrestrial origin. And this, of course, was said by somebody who had the highest level of security clearance, like David Grush. But David Grush can say those things because he's authorized by the Jesuits. So my point in making this book was to explain who is behind Luis Elizondo, David Grush, all the people that were the Sierra Conte in the desert, George Knapp, Jeremy Corbyn, every single person, every time you put the TV on, you get the same people. It's like a mantra.
Stephen Greer.
Stephen Greer is a massive Vatican stooge. In fact, just 3 weeks ago, he admitted, I was in the Vatican and I stayed in the apartment over St. Peter's Square of Monsignor Balducci. He admitted it. He admitted that he stays in the apartment with this guy, and this guy, well, we know him because this is Monsignor Balducci, where Stephen Greer stayed in the Vatican. The guy next to him is the guy I made the book with, Roberto Pinotti.
Wow.
He wrote the preface for one of his books. So to actually, it's quite incredible because when there was Contact in the Desert this year, if you all go on YouTube, there is a site for Contact in the Desert. You have one of the rare public videos that you can find there, because otherwise you have to go on the paying of the website, and you have to pay for viewing the various lectures. There is one lecture that is public, and it's Daniel Sheehan. And he admits in front of the cameras, when one guy says, so what about the Vatican? He says, Pope Leo XIV has invited me to Castel Gandolfo.
Wow.
And he admitted that all the ufologic movement, even before Contact in the Desert, he was there from the start. That means the Jesuits were there from the start.
Wow. So you also say, and I can't wait to read your book. I have it. I've already downloaded it.
I know that you are an avid reader, and I can't wait for you to read it because I know that it's going to be a follow-up to this interview. It's going to be massive.
Zachariah Sitkin.
Absolutely, man.
Oh, my God. The Anunnaki Chronicles, the 12th Planet. I read all those books, and he's involved here in the Vatican. Oh, my God.
Photos. I mean, I'm bringing the receipts here. This guy next to him is a P2 member that I know very well.
Wow.
Gianmario Ferramonti was the co-founder with me of Italians for Time, so I know him very well. Gianmario Ferramonti became the guy who brought the evidence. You see, after Zaccaria Sitchin met with Monsignor Balducci, the guy who met with Stephen Greer, the guy I showed you earlier.
Wow.
After they met, they started to exchange material, even alien material. And this guy, who is Gianmario Ferramonti, who has also a background in technology, was functioning as the guy who would bring the material from Zaccaria Sitchin to Balducci, from Balducci to Zaccaria Sitchin.
Good God. Wow.
So in my book, I also talk, and nobody knows this aside from very few people, Zaccaria Sitchin had an encounter of the third kind that saved his life.
Really?
He was about to die of an illness. He didn't know he had this illness. One night, an Anunnaki showed in front of his bed.
Wow.
And he said, you have to have immediately this operation. I think it was, I'm not sure, it could be the heart, but something else. He said, you have to have immediately this operation. And it saved his life.
Good gosh.
What happened with Zaccaria Sitchin is that he then relayed the same tale also, not only to Gianmario Ferramonti, but also to Jordan Maxwell. And I knew Jordan Maxwell because the late Jordan Maxwell used to live nearby.
Wow.
And Jordan Maxwell confirmed to me that Zaccaria Sitchin had this happening. So very few people know about this encounter of the third kind of Zacharias teaching.
Yeah, good. Wow, you've rubbed elbows with a lot of amazing people, and I always wondered. It's like he's always talking about. We got this information from cuneiform tablets. I'm like, come on, you got all this stuff from these ancient tablets. So now we know you got the information. You got it handed to him on a silver platter. Wow.
Well, he was definitely able to bring his research one step further once he could accede to the Vatican archives. Like we just said earlier in the show, they are a very important part here. For example, the Vatican has some major gatekeepers that work for them, like we said, David Grush, but not only David Grush. Professor Pazulka, for example, I don't know if you ever heard of her. She is a professor of religious studies who has published a book which is now very powerful and deemed very influential, called American Cosmic. In the book American Cosmic, she doesn't really confirm who are these people, the characters. She makes fictional names for them. I put the real names in my book, and they are big shots. Like one of the people that is involved with, because Pazulka was a professor of religious studies, that one day was after she met with Jacques Vallée, who became her mentor. Jacques Vallée is a very influential figure because Jacques Vallée works for the Legacy Program. The Legacy Program, I repeat, is the Department of Energy, which is the descendant of the Manhattan Project, the CIA, and the various defense contractors. As soon as they see a UFO, they need to get it, because that, and sometimes they actively work with these remote viewers to bring down these UFOs. So they could, because the problem in my book, I show how there is a UAP reverse engineering program in the United States, in Russia, and in China. Now, this week, they confirmed, even New York Post confirmed that's true. And so it's not, and in my book, though, I actually show who was directing this. Because, for example, this guy here, you see with all these medals, a Soviet, Lieutenant Colonel Savin. He is used to be in the Soviet times the head of the Unit 1003, a unit of remote viewers. On the other side of the Atlantic, doing exactly the same job as he was doing, there was this other guy who nowadays you see at times, like in the Age of Disclosure documentary. Have you ever seen this guy? This guy is Al Puthoff. Al Puthoff is the guy who wants to classify a reality, who wants to limit our truth. He's extremely controlling of everything. His level of security clearance is on top of the current president of the United States. So when you have Trump saying, well, there is these pilots who told me this and that, the problem, like I explain in my book, is like, and this was confirmed not only in the film Disclosure Day, but also by Marco Rubio in the documentary The Age of Disclosure, they are informed only on a need-to-know basis. So they don't really know anything. They know what they, the minimum they can know. Of course, there has been some presidents more involved, like, for example, in 1973, Nixon had a direct encounter of the third kind, or Eisenhower. But this doesn't happen with every president. So it's very important to realize that at the moment, the Vatican is in a state of panic. I explain what is happening because the Secretary of State of the Vatican has now forbidden any representative of the Vatican to discuss the topic. 10 years ago, the Pope was actually saying, let's baptize an extraterrestrial. Then we had, of course, the Jesuits, who even wrote a book about baptizing extraterrestrials. The Jesuits from the Specula Vaticana, this guy in particular, Guy Consolmagno. The Pope now has gone back to the summer usually the summer residence of the Pope since Pope Francis had transformed it in a museum in 2016, was not really relevant anymore. But it was at the same time the headquarters of the astronomical section of the Jesuits, called the Specula Vaticana, of the Vatican Observatory. That Vatican Observatory is one of the most advanced in the world and is connected directly to Mount Graham in Arizona, where they have very important telescopes, including that infrared that covers the actual telescope, which was known as Lucifer and now is known as Lucy. They actually have two of those, Lucy 1 and 2 now.
Right.
But the Vatican didn't want this association with the name Lucifer. So they scrapped it off their website. They said, no, it's a consortium of German universities. We have nothing to do with it. I exposed them. I have the links, the documents. So but the problem is that there is some connections here that are absolutely mind-blowing. Let me show you something. These are pictures that are pretty shocking. Now, the one on the left is a young Al Puthoff next to Phil Corso. Phil Corso, you heard of Phil Corso? The guy who talked about reverse engineering in Roswell. He was in Roswell.
Okay.
This is Alexander, John B. Alexander, the guy from the Stargate project, the colonel who was in charge of the of various psychological operations, but he was mainly in charge of the Stargate project also. And next to him, you have also a very young George Knapp. This photo is unique, but the photo here on top is also unique. In this photo, the guy in the center is Teller, one of the main people of the Manhattan Project. You see, all these so-called UFO crashes happened where? In New Mexico. It's not only Roswell.
Yep.
So let's go back to that Professor Pasulka that I was discussing earlier with you. Why is she so important? Because she became the disciple of Jacques Vallée. After that, she was blindfolded and brought to a crash site in New Mexico where she was given evidence. But she was not alone. She was with a new guy who operates a front for the CIA, which is currently employed internationally for this disclosure. It's called the Soul Foundation. He's called Gary Nolan. And together with Professor Scatfish, they're in charge of the Soul Foundation. Have you ever heard of the Soul Foundation?
Mm-mm.
Please go on Google and put Soul, S-O-L Foundation. It's going to blow your mind what these people are doing in front of our eyes. Because they have done a secret meeting last year in Italy, but the previous meetings were here in California, and the Soul Foundation is, like I said, a front organization of the CIA.
Oh, wow.
And see what they're doing. Science, policy, and public education for the post-UAP world. They're already preparing for after the UAP is revealed, the aliens are revealed.
Wow.
So it's very much advanced, this whole thing. Now, bringing Professor Pasulka to this UFO crash site, Professor Pasulka is also, you see, the people involved, these are all CIA shields. Go from the top, the guy Gary Nolan, that guy there worked with classified stuff. He's the biggest expert of orbs and non-human intelligence. The guy next to him is Peter Scatfish, which is a really big deal in this world of the controlled disclosure by the Vatican. So and then you have Professor Pasulka, who was blindfolded and made the convert to the UFO, because these people actually have evidence. They actually are the ones working with the legacy program. So my book is exposing something that nobody has ever exposed before. Then you have Jennifer Preston, which is, these are all CIA shields. You know, I mean, you've been in the CIA. You know how they operate.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not telling you anything
They
new.
have a lot of. They want complete control over this UAP UFO.
But then remember, Catholics in action, CIA.
That's I'm starting to see that now. Another thing that really surprised me in your second chapter, you talk about Giordano Bruno,
yes,
who was burned at the stake, and I thought he was burned at the stake because of his heliocentric views, and he wouldn't recant. But you're saying there's some kind of UFO connection?
Well, he made a whole book called The Infinito Universi et Mondium, the infinite universe on the worlds, where he was basically stating that there were other inhabited worlds. That was not for the Vatican something you could accept. Imagine that he was actually brought on the stake in Campo dei Fiori with a thing over his mouth, like
so he
couldn't even talk to anybody and say anything. You see, now let me tell you a little bit about Giordano Bruno. Giordano Bruno was a monk, first of all, no?
A Benedictine, right?
No, he was. I think he was actually Dominican.
Okay.
If I don't get it wrong, he was basically a guy who, as a monk, was very well versed in things.
Brilliant guy. I read a lot of his stuff. I didn't know about that book though. That's pretty wild.
I think that actually I have probably all of his books here.
Wow.
So I mean, I have actually some rare ones that
I gotta come visit someday. Jeez.
One day, no, I have to show you one day one of these books, because they have also. He used to make also images that looked like the ones that later we will have in the how you call them?
Flying saucer.
No, the ones on the in the field, the images that you find in
yeah, the crop circles.
Yes, crop circles.
Wow.
Crop circles. Yes, crop circles, because crop circles. Now, is an interesting thing regarding crop circles. So you see, in the movie Disclosure Day, at one point, you actually see this guy who, while he's talking on the phone, the crop circle is forming around him.
Wow.
In my book, I explain that actually there was an image that was drawn. I think, let me see if I can find you the name. There is actually an image, a specific image made a few centuries ago called, I think, the Morning Devil, of a demon making this crop circle in England. Let me see if I can find it for you. The Mowing Devil is called. It's actually.
So it's from centuries ago. Wow.
Yeah, let me show you, so we can actually show it to your public. You see, that is actually a demon.
Yeah, I've seen that before. That's wild.
And they're actually doing a crop circle.
They had to explain it some way, because when they couldn't explain it, they said it's demons.
Well, that is the interesting thing about, you see, the whole book, because I try to be as biased as possible on this, unbiased. You say unbiased? Yes, unbiased. Not biased, but unbiased. I try to give an idea to the people of what the various, the Catholics think in a certain way, the Orthodox in another, the Evangelicals in another. They each have their own take at the moment on what are these beings. But one thing that is rather shocking is the attitude of the Vatican, because the Vatican is the only one that is all embracing. I mean, why do they have so much certainty? It's because of the story that I narrate in this book. After the first crash retrieval, there was, of course, Roswell, and the Vatican sent immediately one of the most eminent representatives at the time to Roswell. So the Vatican knew about Roswell, and then they were James Francis Cardinal McIntyre, who died in 1979, he was an archbishop here in Los Angeles, was actually in Roswell. There were two sites, not one, by the way. And he went there, and then he went to talk about it with the Pope, who in the meantime had already given the UFO that they had recovered in northern Italy. That's when the reverse engineering project started. Then in the early 50s, they formalized it and made it into what eventually became known as the Legacy Program. Then what happened in the early 70s was that they started the remote viewing projects, both because they saw that in Soviet Union they were doing similar things with telekinesis and stuff. So they started, and as soon as they started in 1971, 72, in 1973 they came to the conclusion that non-human intelligence was interfering with their operations, and that the remote viewers were getting contact with actual aliens. At the beginning, it wasn't called Stargate Project. It would be eventually called Stargate Project only in 1991. And it was called Stargate Project once the whole alien thing took over the show of these remote viewers. People like Ingo Swann, various remote viewers like Pat Buchanan, those people that's, became a way for them to connect with these beings, just like the Russians were doing. Wow. In Russia, they connected through the work of Colonel Sabin. And then the Vatican, you see that this whole disclosure that we are living today with Trump actually started at the end of the Obama presidency. It started when John Podesta made his famous post on Twitter claiming that he could have more regarding the disclosure. After that, he thought, fortunately we didn't have Hillary becoming president, but while he was chairman of the Hillary campaign, he went to Rome to talk with the Vatican about it, and to talk with this organization that was then connected to Russia. They talk about often about Trump and his links to Russia, but nobody talks about John Podesta and these people and their links to Russia, which were much more closer to something that, and this organization that they were creating in Russia that is now being put on pause because of the war in Ukraine, this organization that is actually directed in Moscow by Vladimir Putin, wanted to become like the Bilderberg of the ufologists. But of course, after the war of Ukraine started to erupt, then they had to put everything on hold. But the Jesuits were involved, and my friend Roberto Pinotti was actually called, and he went 2 times in Moscow. And in Moscow, he actually saw the Vatican representatives there. I mean, I have photos here. So, and documents, so that people can see that we are talking about things that are not speculation. This is actually Roberto Pinotti with Lieutenant Colonel Sabin, the head of the remote viewers, who were working during the Setka program in Soviet Union. And in my book, I have also some very interesting testimonies about how there was similar things to what was going on here. And then, of course, you have also the Chinese who nowadays have one of the most advanced space programs, but only thanks to the Jesuits. Let's not forget the Jesuits were the ones who almost 500 years ago went to China and brought them astronomy, and they educated them on astronomy. So, of course, they became very important. Any questions?
Yeah, I mean, we're going all the way back to, Bruno,
Giordano Bruno. Giordano Bruno was one of the most eminent astronomers.
1500, something crazy. So we're all the way back there.
Galileo time.
Back we go?
Yeah. there was, of course, the whole thing about heliocentric, like you said before, no? That was one of the main reasons. But then you had also Galileo Galilei, you had then later on Copernicus. I mean, the thing is that the church...
They were put in, house arrest.
No, but the crazy thing, if you think about it, today, the Jesuits are the ones who are actually getting you to embrace the extraterrestrial, wanting to be at the forefront of this disclosure and all that. Because one of the main people who sent Giordano Bruno on the stake, like I say in my book, was a Jesuit. So the Jesuits went from being the ones who silenced everybody to the ones who instead now are trying to, they are still silencing everybody, but they are directing now the narrative to a more open situation. In fact, Guy Consolmagno, who is currently the director of the foundation of the Vatican Observatory, he said that we should listen to what was said in the Peter's survey of 2008. Now, in my book, the fourth chapter is dedicated to these two surveys that were conducted, one in the middle of the 90s, financed by Robert Bigelow and conducted by the Alexanders. The other one is called the Peter's survey of 2008. These two surveys were basically made so to understand how the various different religious denominations of Christianity, but also Muslims, Jews, Buddhists, will react once disclosure is announced. And then they came with the official narrative. Of course, that is, I think, a little bit doubtful, because they said, oh, the Americans have, they had like 100 priests answering questions, a survey, just to see how they will all, the various pastors, how they will react, the various rabbis. In the end, they came to the conclusion that, yes, the American people are mature enough to take it, no problem. I don't think so, because then you have a bunch of other people who are saying exactly the contrary, including Jacques Vallée. So it's kind of a little bit weird.
Yeah. Well, when I was in the CIA, there was a guy that was disclosing. He was on Carrie Cassidy. You've probably seen some of her stuff. She reveals a lot of stuff on the UFO stuff. But he came on. It was Bill Broadbreaker, and he was a former. He claimed to be, former SEAL. He was involved in programs that were, in Area 51. He worked with the Greys. He worked with this system that you could see the future on it. And I was like, I kind of validated the guy. And from that, my life turned upside down. They came after me to destroy my life. So the CIA still is, suppressing this. Now you say the Jesuits are like, oh yeah, it's like, we like the ET stuff now, and they're cool. But on the other hand, you got the CIA basically still trying to suppress this stuff.
Well, I think we're going towards something big, though, if you think about it, because now a lot of people say, but why now? Well, one of the main reasons is that a lot of things have happened since we have reverse engineered this technology. This technology is the technology that has brought us the AI, the data centers. We went from Project Stargate being a remote viewing program to Project Stargate being a data center program, and it's all connected. Wow. So now that we have the technology, we are basically fallen in their own trap, because they have built a digital prison around us, and they don't need to come with the UFOs like Independence Day, when they are basically owning the AI. Now, Avi Loeb, the guy who I told you is a major shield, he actually works for Shin Bet, for the Israel military intelligence, but he also acts like the scientist who knows it all, and now he's going to be in charge of the scientific committee on UAP. This guy said that if the aliens come on Earth, they will connect with our AI. Well, my thesis is they actually gave us these things, so we build the AI, and there's no need of connecting the AI because basically the AI is their product. So we are already screwed up because we bring an alien in our pocket every time we have a smartphone. Now, now you might think that that is not real, but actually it is real, and I tell you why. Because when we hear the history of how the AI developed and how the whole history, well, I mean, in the end, what we are having now is a product that is definitely changing our reality. Anthropic, for example, has been embraced like the good AI by the Vatican, who made the encyclicas. Wow, the encyclica, big thing. Or the Pope has embraced the AI, but the good AI. And then ChatGPT is the evil AI. And then they say that Anthropic will not be used for military. That's nonsense. They already said that every time there will be a special operation like Venezuela, they will be using Anthropic. So that's it. They are just selling us a lie regarding the good and bad AI, because there is no good and bad AI. There just is a one AI that is going to control everything by 2030. And in my book, well, I don't want to give out too much, but in the end, you will understand that from next year onwards, something really special is starting, and it's going to last 7 years. And in that alignment with Sirius, that's the moment in which they will take over the whole show.
Wow. So yeah, they have to have these alignments. They're all into that stuff.
There's a ritual that is going to take place. It's going to last 7 years. A ritual takes 7 years, and it's going to take place in the heart of Africa.
Interesting. Yeah, you've given us some really good tidbits in this book, and yeah, definitely appreciate it. So what do you think the future is? We're going to be able to avoid the UFO control system that they're trying to spring on us, or what?
Well, you see, it's about really a situation that they have devised for a very long time. So whereby by the time we are finally, disclosure is starting now. It's not going to be given to us in 1 year. It's going to probably take a few years. But
Right.
by the time they give us the full picture, the world will have already changed, and we will have been impossibilitated to react in any way against their interest. Because that is their problem. They want to maintain control over us. The governments know that once the alien disclosure happens, well, a lot of people will say, who cares about the president? Who cares? I mean, these guys, they're more powerful. So that is what they want to avoid. You understand? They want to avoid the fact that people might reject not only religion, because there will be people who will also be driven to think that these are the saviors of mankind, because that is also the false perception that the Jesuits want to bring us. You understand? So think about the fact that on one side you have people like J.D. Vance, who initially said they were demons. Yeah?
Right. I was going to ask that. Good. Thank you.
That is the topic that I opened the book with.
Right. Okay.
But then, once that this whole thing started and the disclosure is starting, even Vance had to kind of a little bit, because the demon, just when it was a couple of weeks ago, an exorcist who used to be an intelligence officer, Monsignor Rossetti, you heard about it, no? In the Archbishop of Washington, D.C., kicked them out as exorcist after 19 years. And because he said that the aliens were demons.
Right.
So the Orthodox, they continue to say the aliens are demons.
That's just disinformation. They're like just seeding disinformation. They've always been doing that, though.
Well, I mean, the thing is this. Of course, we can't expect that every single extraterrestrial, interdimensional being or extra-dimensional being is a positive being. There might actually be fallen angels. There might actually be demons. But of course, good and evil, is reflected at a universal level. So if you have 4 races, there might be a race that is inclined to be more demonic and more evil than another one that is more angelic and more, even us humans, we are given the choice. We can go and become the monsters that at times we do become, or we can become some very good and positive beings, but it is up to us. We have been given this choice. Other races might not have that choice. They might go by the will of the single, like, the queen bee. So there is a lot of things that will change in the coming years. And for me, it was important by doing this book that people finally know who is controlling the whole thing, the narrative. That when you put on the TV, you don't simply become a passive spectator of what is the biggest change in human history and the biggest event. Because I have decided with this book to abandon my interest in politics. I'm all interested in exopolitics.
Awesome.
Do you think that it's relevant if this president or this other president does something when in reality there is something else that controls the whole agenda? I mean, think about it. Xi Jinping, Putin, Trump, they know already that we are not alone. They might each have, more information regarding a subject than the other, but in reality, they know. And that is what also, a lot of this at the top level of our society these days, they are actually moving, knowing about this great revolution that will occur with this disclosure. That's why a guy like Luis Elizondo has built a bunker. That's why Peter Thiel has constructed a secret society that is actually controlling and preparing for World War III, and at the same time Peter Thiel has moved the family to Buenos Aires and says, as soon as China or Russia does something, I am going to Buenos Aires, I'm going to Argentina, I don't want to stay here in America. So this is not really...
Not encouraging.
Not encouraging. Not encouraging. Absolutely.
Not at all. Wow. All right, Leo. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Thanks for the information. Guys, get out and get that book. It's going to be, just like all of his books, it's going to be incredibly insightful and revelatory and take you to the next level in consciousness, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, my intention is for you and everybody else to read this book, because I really feel that it's for us important to not be manipulated on this subject, that we have actually the freedom to decide where to go on this subject. If this is really, I mean, the fact that Steven Spielberg has sold us the gray aliens that for decades the abductees have referred to as being evil, as being good. And at one point, we even had a child play with E.T. Oh, wow, E.T., what a nice...
E.T. phone home.
E.T. phone home and the whole thing. And then you have Encounters of the Third Kind where everybody's deliberately... And these grays, they're all nice. And then, in the last movie, at the end of the movie, they are even bringing out of retirement E.T. on a wheelchair almost, because that's what it is. We have E.T. arriving in a wheelchair for the final disclosure. Now, disclosure could happen in 2 ways at this point. By the government giving us their own version, and of course, finally telling us that we are not alone and that we have aliens that are actually currently even in laboratories owned by the military industrial complex. Or we could have, and I hope that actually is the best solution, that finally one of these alien races manifest themselves, because then it's not anymore in the hands of the governments to control the narrative. Then it's our hands, just, once they are in front of us. But that is not possible, because a lot of these races have treaties of not intervention on the affairs of a primitive species like us. So that is unfortunate. But let's see what's going to happen. Thank you so much for having me on today. And the Vatican top secret alien agenda is something that we will be probably talking about for a long time. And also, once you read this book, I'm sure you're going to have a lot of other questions.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, Lael. So always
care.
an honor. Thank you very much. And we'll see you guys next time.
God bless you all.
God bless.
Hello, Patriots. I'm at Restored Republic via a GCR update compiled by Judy Byington. The Obama family is a manufactured farce that was used by cabal-controlled CIA to destroy our nation from within, said John F. Kennedy on Telegram. Are Barack Obama's children even his? No, they're not actually. Or did he rent them from his campaign chairman? Chairman of the Obama Foundation, Martin Nesbitt, sure looks like Malia and Natasha Obama. He sits on the boards of directors of publicly traded companies like CenterPoint Energy, Norfolk Southern Railroad Corporation, and American Airlines Group. He was on the board of the Chicago Housing Authority, which I believe Big Mike was part of. Martin Nesbitt, close personal friend of Obama, and was also the campaign treasurer during Obama's 2008 presidential campaign. Imagine if a foreign Muslim asset infiltrated our highest level of government as president with his fake birth certificate and fake transgender wife, created a fake family to destroy our nation from within. Then Obama went after President Trump, and it was all done directly by the CIA and their media assets they own. A big mistake they're all about to realize. Judy note. Below is an article I wrote 3 years ago that points out the Obama, Biden, Clinton, Pelosi criminality that has yet to hit the national news, let alone be recognized by the general public. One would ask why was there little or no interest in the workings of the deep state globalists, since the purpose of the Obama administration appeared to be changing America from a democratic regime to socialist and communism. If it weren't for Trump, they would have made it. I purposefully left in the Article 14 references, even though most of which have since been erased from the internet, to show the censorship we still face today. Saturday, April 22nd, 2023, and then the link is Obama, Biden behind arming ISIS Benghazi, SEAL Team 6 massacres. Judy note. Speaking of censorship, for years I have almost daily posted articles and updates on the internet's largest news organization before its news. That is until last Monday. This has yet to correct the problem, and I haven't been able to post all week. This is the third time this has happened. You'd think I was publishing something the deep state didn't want you to know. EBS alert. Very soon, everyone worldwide will receive 7 emergency broadcast system text messages on their cell phones urging us to go home and stay for 10 days, though the EBS could last 3 to 6 weeks. Be prepared. During those 10 days, banks will close. The internet and ATMs will not work, and phones will only work for 911 calls. You can obtain a signal app from the military which will work your phone. On TVs and radios worldwide, the EBS will play 8-hour documentaries 3 times a day for 10 days. 10 days of communication darkness. After the 10 days of communication darkness, all phones, TVs, radios, and computers worldwide run on the secure Starlink satellite system. All peoples of the world will be called into redemption centers where we will receive Nisar payments, can exchange and redeem our currency in Zim, and set up secure bank accounts identified by our own body rhythms through the new quantum system. Banks will no longer have access to our monies. Possible timing. On Monday, March 2nd, President Trump signed Executive Order 14178, banning CBDC development and ordering a digital asset strategic reserve. Since Monday, June 1st, redemption centers in 14 cities have been staffed and operational. Military personnel were present at each location. NDAs would be required. On Tuesday, June 9th, the new gold asset-backed quantum financial system went full global through the Starlink satellite system. On Wednesday, June 10th, the old Cabal SWIFT system processed its last transaction. On Thursday, June 11th, 2026, at 4:47 a.m., the old banking SWIFT system died when JP Morgan executed its first live transaction through the XRP ledger. On Tuesday, June 16th, Congress passed a bill that prohibited the cabal from producing the fiat digital dollar because the new gold asset-backed currency was already in place across 209 nations. On Saturday, June 20th, 2026, bondholders in Tier 3 were expecting to be notified, exchange, and have access to their monies. Between Monday, June 22nd and Sunday, June 28th, Tier 4B notifications will be sent out. The first wave covered 1.2 million verified accounts. Saturday, July 4th, President Trump would announce the new gold standard currency. And remember, this is an event-driven war, so the dates are fluid. EBS blackout martial law lockdowns. Wednesday, June 17th, EBS activation. Quantum connected on Telegram. No timeframes have been given for EBS activation. There have been many suspicions on time limits. Absolutely nothing has been set in stone about any of it. Absolutely no one knows, and it is designed that way for a reason. It will happen when it is time. When it happens, follow the EBS instructions to the letter. All we have been told by the operator who is dialed in: number 1, everyone will be home, and 2, it will happen at the top of the hour. The general consensus in decoder groups is to be ready for 3 to 6 weeks. Everything has already been factored in. You will be fine. Do not panic. Worldwide, we will receive 7 trumpets, aka EBS text messages on our phones, alerting us on what is happening and urging us to tune into our TVs and radios. We will be urged to go and stay at home for at least 10 days, though the EBS could last 3 to 6 weeks. Worldwide, on TVs and radios, the EBS will play 8-hour documentaries 3 times a day for 10 days, called 10 Days of Communication Darkness. Worldwide, the internet and ATMs will not work during the 10 days. Worldwide, phones will work for 911 calls, 911 calls, but we can obtain a signal app from the military which will secure the phones for regular use through this new Starlink satellite system and quantum computer. The documentaries will cover topics of arrests, tribunals, fraud, corruption, pedophilia. After the 10 days of communication darkness, all phones, TVs, radio, and computers worldwide will be connected to the new quantum internet, run on the secure Starlink satellite system. All peoples of the world will be called into redemption centers where we will receive Nazar Jasar payments, can exchange and redeem our currency, and ZIM and set up secure bank accounts identified by our own body rhythms. Through the new quantum system, banks will no longer have access to our monies. Global currency reset. Judy note, from the below sources, it appeared we could anticipate Tier 4B, us, the internet group, being notified to set exchange appointments sometime between Monday, June 22nd and Sunday, June 28th. Wednesday, June 17th, Mark Z, a bondholder, was receiving his money on Thursday, June 18th. Other bondholders were expecting to have their money this weekend. All of Tier 3 were going to exchange this weekend. The U.S. Mint was putting out a $1 gold coin. The new gold standard will be announced by Trump on July 4th. At that time, gold was expected to be worth from $1,500 to $2,000 an ounce. Silver was expected to be worth from $1,200 to $1,500 an ounce. I would think gold would be a lot more than that, because right now, isn't it around $3,500 an ounce, or somewhere around there, $4,000, $3,500? But I guess we'll see. Silver that's a huge jump for silver. So that's good if you're collecting silver. Wednesday, June 17th, update. On June 11th, 2026 at 4:47 a.m., the old banking system died when JP Morgan executed its first live transaction through the XRP ledger, connected to Ondo Finance, connected to MasterCard, routed through ISO 20022 protocol. No press conference, no announcement. SWIFT processed its last independent transaction on June 10th. Since June 11th, every single cross-border settlement between the 47 participating institutions has been routed through the new ledger, not tested live. processing $4.2 billion per hour as you read this. Congress passed the CBDC prohibition clause on June 16th, buried inside a housing bill. No standard loan vote. No debate. They banned the government digital dollar permanently through 2030 because the people's system is already operational and they cannot compete with it. They did not ban CBDC because they don't want digital currency. They banned it because the replacement already exists and it's decentralized. Tier 4B notifications begin between June 22nd and June 28th. The first wave covers 1.2 million verified accounts. Since June 1st, redemption centers in 14 cities have been staffed and operational. Military personnel are present at each location. NDAs will be required. The exchange rates you've been told are not public yet, but the structure is locked, gold-backed, ASIC verified, quantum encrypted through Starshield satellite coverage that went full global on June 9th. The man who signed Executive Order 14178 on March 2nd, banning CBDC development and ordering a digital asset strategic reserve, did not do it for Wall Street. He did it for you, every patriot who held, every person who was called crazy, every family that believed when the world laughed. Israel will be last. Wednesday, June 17th, President Trump just dunked on Israel for committing war crimes against civilians. So the tide is turning now. He's beginning to turn against Israel. I knew this was coming eventually. So that's a good thing. We're getting closer. Israel has been fighting Hezbollah too long and too many people are being killed, and you don't have to knock down an apartment house every time you're looking for somebody, because there are a lot of people in those apartment houses and they're not all Hezbollah. That can tell you. And I suggested to Israel to let Syria take care of Hezbollah, because to be honest with you, I think they do a better job of doing it. Mr. Poole on Telegram. And according to Charlie Ward, Hezbollah is paid for and sponsored by Israel, and that's their excuse to go in, and it's a land grab. A Lebanon land grab is what he said. And I'm not surprised. So I think there's a lot of secrets that are held about Israel we're going to find out that are not good. Wednesday, June 17th, breaking. Benjamin Netanyahu says he will not comply with President Trump's peace deal with Iran and will strike Iran and Lebanon whenever he deems necessary. Pompous ass. I'm sorry. Netanyahu says he does not see eye to eye with Trump on the issue and that he is responsible for Israel's security. Netanyahu needs to be removed. EBS Live on Telegram. He's a walking ego. Probably a clone. I don't think that's the original Netanyahu. AI mind control. Wednesday, June 17, 2026. French intelligence agency drops Palantir AI tech over U.S. dependency and spying fears. The Gateway Pundit by Paul Sarin.
Now, the Satanists are spouting out more lies than I can remember seeing. Let's start with this so-called SpaceX initial public offering that supposedly turned Elon Musk into the world's first trillionaire. It's valued at more than 100 times their sales, most of which come, or a large portion of which comes from the U.S. government. And basically, if you look at the details, they say, well, we're going to have power centers in space, and we're going to colonize Mars, and we're going to have 1 million humanoid robots. And remember, this company had to use actors dressed as robots because they don't actually have any robots. And somehow they're supposed to be worth more than, all the real companies around the world, like Toyota, that actually make cars. It's nonsense. It's a giant hallucination. And there's so much fakery that it's hard to know where to begin, but I know it's not going to last longer. The other thing that's crossed my radar is very important is all these AI data centers are some kind of huge fraud. Watch this clip of this guy who actually runs data centers.
My name is Doug Seavey. I live at 3392 64th Street, Palo, Iowa. I've called the mayor and suggested that I get put on some kind of a committee because I'm Palo's resident expert. I build data centers. I own data centers. I built the first private data center in the state of Iowa, and everything that Google is telling you is BS. I have a data center right now that's running in Hiawatha, and I have been there 14 years and have never used 1 gallon of water. What Google isn't telling you is they don't want to use the technology because it costs more. They're going to burn through the water, and when it's done, and they don't care. Then they'll put the money in. And so I can guarantee you, if you guys want to start a committee, I'll volunteer because I'm the expert. I build them. I'm working on one right now. I'm working on one in Milwaukee. I live here, and if I told you on the phone, I called you and talked to you, and I said, you should really let me help you. I never heard anything back. And I warned you. I said, my well goes dry. I'm coming after you because I know what's going on. And you can't do this. You guys have to say no water. They don't have to have it. I mean, to give you an idea, you people, how many people in here have heard of Unity Point Health? Okay? All right? I have 100% of their IT in my data center, and I've never used a gallon of water. And I'm the most efficient data center in the world. So this is all crap, and you guys don't want to listen. In fact, I called you and said, maybe we should talk. Never heard back from you. So if you guys want to put a committee together, you can call me. I'll tell you the truth, and I can explain everything to you how this works, because they're lying to you. Big time. There's absolutely no reason to use a gallon of water. And the same thing on the efficiency of the electricity. They're doing the cheapest way they can. All they want to do is get the gravy, and when it turns to shit, they're gone. Google is not our friend. So anybody wants to talk to me, I'll sit over here afterwards, and I'll explain it to you. So if you would like, I would be more than happy to be on your committee to work on this, because I am the expert. I build them. I know.
So in other words, they're grabbing huge amounts of energy and stealing water from around the country for something that has nothing to do with data centers. And my belief is that the Khazarian mafia, the Satanists, are trying to create some kind of artificial intelligence god that will power robots to kill us. I know that sounds crazy, but the magazine New Scientist has just reported that they deployed autonomous drones in Ukraine, and they don't distinguish between, they see. And this is already being deployed. And we got to remember, the Ukraine is a crime organization. It's not a country. The Russian government spokesman and others have put out tons of proof that it's a center for... So how much longer is this going to last? We're all wondering. How much longer can we put up with this stuff? Here's one more lie that I want to put out. Take a look at this other clip of Trump talking about Iran. The whole story about the war in the Middle East and the closing of the Straits of Hormuz and all that, it's almost entirely fake. The reality is that Israel has suffered the greatest military defeat in its history, and it's not going to last much longer. He is saying that dozens of Israel's top generals and their main command headquarters was destroyed. This is supposed to be the safest And there was another clip I wanted to show you. It was sent to me by the T3 Freemasons, but it's apparently been deleted from the internet because it's no longer available at the link I had. But it shows Colonel Douglas McGregor saying that Iran just destroyed 400 Israeli tanks with missiles. That means that the Israeli military leadership has been destroyed, and their main ground force, their whole doctrine, which relied on tanks, is over. So Israel's not going to last much longer. And that means that the next step will be to